Good evening and welcome to the City of Pasco Council Special Meeting and Regular Workshop. The council thanks you for being part of our city government, and at special meetings, the council takes formal action on specific items, and during the workshops, only discusses issues with no formal actions taken. The agenda packets are available on the City of Pasco's website at www.pasco-wa.gov/agenda. Please note that the city council meetings continue to be held remotely and may be accessed through GoToWebinar. This meeting is being also televised live on Pasco TV channel 191, on Spectrum Cable in Pasco and Richland, and also streamed on the city's Facebook page, website, and YouTube channel. This and previous council meetings video is available on the city's website. Through proclamation number 20-28.4, Governor Inslee extended the directive making temporary changes to Open Public Meetings Act. These virtual meetings will continue until the OPMA restrictions are lifted. And lastly, the public may submit their comments and/or questions for items not on the agenda by contacting the city manager or city clerk or using the feedback form on the city's website. And with that out of the way, again, I want to remind everyone that here at the City Council, for those of us who are here, are adhering to the social distancing guidelines and wearing our masks anytime we're within 6 feet of each other, and always making it a point to be safe. I have a commitment to make sure I communicate this in every meeting that we have. And as I look around the room, the few of us that are here, everybody's got masks. We have sanitization, hand sanitizers in the back. And this area has been sanitized before we came to this meeting. So I want to thank everyone for that. I also want to say Happy Father's Day to all those men who some way or another are a father to someone. And I hope you all enjoyed and had a safe Father's Day holiday. So thank you for that. With that, I'd like to have a roll call vote, please. Not vote, but roll call, please.
Councilmember Alvarado.
Present.
Councilmember Maloney. Councilmember Milne.
Present.
Councilmember Roach.
Present.
Councilmember Serrano.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Barajas.
Present.
Mayor Martinez.
Present.
All 7 accounted for, Mayor.
Thank you, appreciate it, and we can now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and next, we're going to move right into new business. We have a bid award improvements to fire station number 81 and 82 and fire training rehab. Mr. Bob Gear, are you on the line?
Yes, I am, Mayor. This is an award to do some remodel work at Station 81, including adding a restroom.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
And can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yes, we had minor interruption, but we can hear you now, Chief Gear.
Okay. At Station 81, adding some shower capability, some more shower capability, and a larger turnout storage room, removing all the tile and carpeting in that station, and grinding those floors and sealing them because they're much easier to keep clean, especially as we've seen here in the last few months. And Station 2 gets flooring work done. Both Station 1 and 2 are going to get new alerting systems installed. And then at the training center, we'll have a restroom built there that they can go into when they're contaminated from doing live fire and not have to come into the main building. And then there'll be an emergency shower area in case we need to do an emergency decon of someone at the training area. As you can see, the bids were well under the engineer's estimate again. It seems to be a good bidding climate. This was delayed for a couple of weeks because we did have a protest to the bid. That protest has been resolved, and we're ready to award.
Very well. Does anyone have any questions or comments? I see Mr. Chief Gear, yes, that it is favorable. As a matter of fact, yeah, there's a significant difference between the two contractors. Was there anything you can share as far as why such a range?
Actually, it's kind of interesting. I don't know if council remembers, we just awarded Station 84 to the same company, Jackson Contractor Group. They're originally out of Missoula, have done a lot of major public works projects in Montana and Idaho. And they just recently opened a Walla Walla office, and I think they're trying to be competitive. So we've got some good bids.
Good. Well, we can sure appreciate that. Thank you very much. Anybody have any suggestions or comments that would like to ask Chief Gear? If not, we are making a motion on this tonight, correct? If there's no comment, and I don't know if there's maybe a delay, I'll give it a couple seconds to make sure everybody has an opportunity to share or comment. Well, I guess I would just make one other comment. You know, perhaps many are thinking, what are we doing, you know, making upgrades when, you know, during these terrible, or, you know, this pandemic and during these times. But Mr. Zabel, we were assured that, you know, this money is set aside for these type of activities, and they're allocated for this in part of our plan, correct?
Yeah, the council's already let a LTGO bond, limited general obligation bond, last year. And so the money's there. Debt service, we're going to pay on it, whether we spend it or don't pay on it. And the only thing we can really spend it on are capital improvements consistent with what we let the bond for, so.
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, if there's no further comments, Councilwoman Barajas, would you like to make a motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I move to award the bid for remodel of Fire Station number 81 and Fire Station number 82 and improvements to the fire training facility to Jackson Contractor Group Incorporated in the amount of $857,397, including Washington State sales tax, and further authorize the city manager to execute the contract documents.
Thank you. There's been a motion.
Councilmember Maloney.
Go ahead.
I'll second that.
And there's been a second by Councilmember Maloney. So all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Well, that was the agenda item, see, for the special meeting, and we're gonna adjourn this special meeting, and I'll adjourn, and then we're gonna give me 1 second to go right into our regular workshop meeting. And with that, we've already gone through the details before a meeting, and we've already had a roll call and a pledge of allegiance. So tonight we have, well, before we go there, we'll go to number 4, verbal reports from council members. Is there any council member that would like to share anything from last week?
This is Councilmember Alvarado.
Yes, Mr. Alvarado.
Yeah, I just wanted to share a couple things. One, all transportation related. One was for Benton Franklin Transit. We had a special meeting with an executive session, and just reporting that we are working on the collective bargaining agreements. And so that's been a long process, but definitely moving forward with that. We also had a Good Roads meeting, as well as Benton Franklin Council of Governments. I was treated to the same presentation twice by Mr. Trepanier from WashDOT. And I wish I had a very good report, but it actually, it might even be good to invite him here. But essentially, we're in big trouble as it pertains to the state of good repair. We do not have money to fix our infrastructure. And so it's definitely very sobering news. Something we already knew, but has been very exacerbated even more by the COVID-19 And so I think from a legislator's perspective, there's going to be a lot of trying to figure out how to repair our roads down the line. And so could speak about that for a while, but definitely something very sobering just for us to keep in mind. There might be some harsh realities up ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Alvarado. I can only imagine, I guess it would be nice to just get an idea or a forecast on, how much actual less transportation is occurring since the pandemic. But yes, I can only imagine that this is going to be a long-term situation we're running into, and we're hoping for the best. But thank you for sharing that with us. Any other council member?
This is Councilwoman Roach, and I want to say a little over a week ago, participated in a PSA that was made by Visit Tri-Cities, and it was all about social distancing and wearing a mask. So it was local electeds from all over the Mid-Columbia, and so we made that PSA. I think that it's up on the city's YouTube page or been put up on social media. So that was kind of cool, and just wanted to tell you guys about it.
All right, thank you. I actually did see that video, and you did a great job, along with everybody else who was involved, and thank you for doing that. Anyone else? I actually attend at least 2 meetings a week. One of them is the co-op meeting, where we get to share with local elected officials and the health district and many others on the situation and kind of get apprised of where we're at. I don't think it's any secret. Everybody knows that our numbers are elevated, and I think the main focus is on Yakima County because they're in a worse situation than we're in at this point. But I do want to make sure that everybody that's listening and anybody who can share this information, we here in the Tri-Cities, our hospitals are filling up. We don't have many beds left. There's only a couple of ventilators, a couple of ventilators, excuse me for that, ventilators available, and we are in a situation where we need to understand that this disease is spreading, and although it's not hurting many people or hurting them very much to a point where they have to be hospitalized, but there are quite a few that are. So we're just doing the best we can to ensure that the community is being informed and to please cooperate. I actually have been involved in 2 campaigns, and that you guys will be seeing a little bit in the near future to just encourage everybody to please mask up so we can open up. So thank you for that. If there's nobody else, then one of the main reasons for this. Oh, go ahead. Mr. Maloney, do you have something?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, can I just, I want to pile onto that a little bit in terms of stats. I'm a math guy, so as soon as I see numbers, I start seeing what they mean. And over this weekend, we had nearly 200 people in just Franklin County tested positive for the disease. And that puts us, that's about 0.2% of our entire population in Franklin County. About 0.2% just diagnosed over this weekend. So when you start looking at how many people are actively have the illness, we're talking about probably close to 1%, and that's only the people that we know of because they've tested positive. This is spreading very rapidly in our community, and it's growing very rapidly. So I just wanted to emphasize and add a little bit more to what you're saying, Mr. Martinez, and how important it is to understand this is spreading, and this is increasingly spreading, and this is not going to go well for us if we as a community don't take this seriously and fight back. So thank you. I just wanted to add that in.
Yes, and to keep adding to that, there's still a National Guard is still testing at the 2 locations, one at the Toyota Center and one at Hapo Center. So, and my understanding is that there's been a lot of response to that. They're basically filled up. A lot of people are making their appointments. So just please continue to be vigilant and take this seriously, because we're just trying to be safe for all people, and understand that so many people get together and well, I don't have it. Well, unless you're positive you don't have it, then it's really not safe. So just take that into consideration. So thank you for that. One of the we're going to go to the next item for discussion here, and this is one of the main reasons why we wanted to start early and have the special meeting and get going. We have with us today Chief Roski, and we'll be discussing the community policing accomplishments and use of force, liability, law, and policy. And it's I think it was 164 page long. And I don't know how Mr. Roski is going to go do this very quick, but we're here to listen. I know the community wants to hear where we're at and why we do what we do. And I will be the first to say, that we're proud of our Pasco Police Department. We're proud of where we've come, because we've come a long ways in the last several years. And I'm not going to steal your thunder, Mr. Roski, but thank you for what you and all the Pasco Police Department does. I know during these times, things are very difficult, and it's really hard to keep everybody in perspective. But I hope that tonight your presentation will get people to relax and to get a better knowledge of what we have to offer and what we're doing in our communities with your department. So with that, Mr. Roski.
So, Mayor, if I could
yes,
say a few words, just kind of set it up. So there's been a considerable amount of dialogue nationally and regionally in the recent weeks on law enforcement reform. And Pasco had its moment several years ago in the wake of an officer-involved shooting back in 2015. And at that time, that's where our efforts in the department to really ramp up measures to better protect the community and the officers serving the community. And the department and the community have been working together hand in hand, really literally since then. At the time that initiated what's been a continuous dialogue. We've had community members, community groups, English, Spanish. We've had ACLU in here, Governor's Commission on Hispanic Affairs, and we worked through policy, I think in a very transparent way, worked through policy updates, and we've spent the last several years improving and updating. And most of the council was not here during that process. Council has certainly seen pieces of it. Mayor, you're the only one on the council now that was actually here during the entire process. Certainly, council's seen pieces of the accreditation, state and national accreditation that the department's achieved. Many of the council were here for that. The implementation of body-worn cameras took a couple of years to kind of test and figure out which one we wanted, what would work best for the community and the department, and make that selection. So you've seen pieces of it, but this is really the first opportunity that we've had to present to the full council, kind of a comprehensive look, but it's also probably the first opportunity we've had to present to the public everything that's been done over the last several years. A lot of them were involved in many of the pieces of it, but few have seen everything all kind of laid out. So tonight, I think is a great opportunity for the council and public to get some deep background on the effort. And what you're going to hear tonight is that community policing has been deep in the core of the Pasco Police Department for more than a couple decades. I mean, that's the philosophy that they've adopted more than 20 years ago and has lived up to and has continuously tried to improve. The chief and his staff will discuss in some detail the progress of the department over the past several years and the posture that they've taken of continuous improvement in the profession, in the safety of this community. And so we can stop at that summary, or we can continue on with about an hour and 15-minute. So with that, I'll turn it over to the chief.
Thank you, Mr. Zabel. Mr. Roski.
Thank you, Mr. Zabel. Good evening, Mayor Martinez, council members, and the public that may be watching. You know, it's my privilege to serve as the police chief of this great community, and lead the 92 officers and professional staff of the Pasco Police Department. You know, like you, I was shocked and horrified by the death of George Floyd at the hands of a police officer. I can tell you that as a police officer for my entire adult life, I could not imagine how someone in my profession could allow that to happen. I also know that tragedy of that event has shaken the confidence and trust the public has in law enforcement. I want you to know that law enforcement across the country is committed to rebuilding that trust, and the Pasco Police Department stands in the forefront as leaders in this profession to ensuring that confidence and trust is built even stronger as we move forward. The Pasco Police Department is nationally recognized as a model police department because of our community engagement, training, our policies, and our practices. The presentation this evening will give you some insight into the policing philosophy, policing culture, if you will, of this police department, and the training and legal requirements necessary when an officer, although seldom, must use force. Our police officers put their lives on the line every night, and I have the utmost confidence in their abilities. And I want you to have that same confidence. So as we move forward, let me just start with the slideshow, with a short definition of community policing and what it means to the Pasco Police Department and the ability. This is a definition up there, but I'll just summarize. It's the partnership and problem solving to ensure we have a safe community, recognizing that the police don't have all the answers. And if we're going to be successful at reducing crime and the fear of crime, we're going to need the partners of our community. For Pasco, one of the things that we've done is identified some core principles: community partnerships, organizational transformation, and problem solving. For us, the organizational transformation started 20 years ago as we looked at how we deployed our resources. I'll go into more later on that. And then we identified part of this community policing concept of problem solving. How do we look at problems in a community, whether the police officer can solve it or not? He can be a great facilitator. There may be many things that aren't in the realm of what a police officer can do as far as laws or enforcing laws. But as a police officer, we have a lot of influence, and we have the ability to navigate government and other organizations to help the community solve those problems. Where in a given neighborhood they may become frustrated. For us, that's where we come in, is working through those. Community policing is nothing new. It's actually started back in 1829 with Sir Robert Peel and his 9 principles of policing. The one principle that I brought out, because I think it is the most important, is that the police are the public and the public are the police. Really, if you think about that core concept, your police officers in a municipal government organization, in a county organization, all come from within the community that they live and work. So this, I guess this holistic understanding that the police must come from within the community. Sir Robert Peel, even back in 1829, his guiding principles today still guide where we're at and what we're doing. For Pasco, we formalized community policing as a department-wide philosophy in the mid-90s. If you'll remember back that far, Pasco had a very high crime rate, and we had to find a way to get control if we were going to have a prosperous and safe community. And this concept of partnering with the community was adopted by that policing philosophy of community policing. We assigned permanent patrol areas, which means that every night that a patrol officer goes to work, he isn't just randomly assigned somewhere in the city to work. He's assigned a patrol district that he knows, that he gets to learn over years of assignment. Ideally getting to know the people in that community better solving their problems and working in partnership. I mentioned the problem-solving strategy. That goes to the core of what we as a police department and our culture stands for. When our police officer takes a call, that 911 call or that request for information, they own that call until they can find a solution. They may not have the answer, but they can certainly help facilitate it, as I'd mentioned. In the mid-90s, late 90s, we created area resource officers because we knew we needed to identify specific officers that could do nothing more than look at problem solving, reduce the fear of crime, and if you can, as I mentioned, coming out of the late 80s, early 90s with a very high crime rate in this community, we needed officers that could focus and involve their strategy to solving those. We identified mini stations so that the community had a location where they didn't have to come down to police headquarters. They had neighborhood police stations where these area resource officers would be. We identified the most serious of locations, the highest crime areas within the city to put these mini stations. Many thought we were crazy when we did that. We had police stations that had been shot up. We had people trying to get us to move our mini stations because they wanted to continue with their criminal activity in those areas. We didn't leave, and today those mini stations exist. And of course, we've added another one as the city has grown out west, and we'll continue to look at those. Part of that strategy was to develop a Chief Citizens Advisory Committee, so we could take committee members. There's 11 that sit on that committee that I meet with once a month. And the prior two chiefs have met with those community representatives to get a pulse of the community and make sure that we are hearing directly from segments of the community, and the information to the chief isn't filtered. As much as the chief likes to get out and be in the community, even when he is, sometimes those can be filtered, and he needs to have the confidence of community members that will give him the real perspective. When we develop our patrol schedules, whether that's our shift schedules, whether that's patrol or detectives, it is all centric around community policing as a deployment. No matter what we're doing, we're deploying those resources with that concept in mind. That's a high-level overview, I know, but hopefully it gives you just a little glimpse of our perspective and our culture within the department. Some of the partners that we've developed over the years have their little logos up there. It is really about that partnership and that community engagement. You'll see our social media, Facebook and Twitter down there. We do a lot of great communicating with the public. Certainly we've enjoyed some loyal followers, 65,000 on our Facebook network. Gives us the ability to immediately communicate with the public. Many of those other ones that I have listed up there have been around for a while. A new one might be Coffee with a Cop. That is literally to get our officers into given neighborhoods to roll their sleeves up with no agendas, nothing other than to listen and help people solve their problems and bridge that gap. And that's a valuable program for us, and we're excited as we get to the end of COVID here and we see some relief, we can get our Coffee with a Cop programs and many of these others back out so that we can continue with our community engagement. Some key accomplishments for the department. Mr. Zabel set us up for many of those. I'm sure I'll leave some off. There's just an awful lot of accomplishments in the last couple of decades, certainly in the last 4 or 5 years that we've seen success with. We partnered with the Department of Justice Cops Office as we undertook technical assistance to adopt 21st century policing practices. If you'll remember, President Obama's commission in 2016 adopted the 21st century policing report, and we all 6 of those pillars we've identified. We've made progress on all of them and continue to make progress on them. We work closely with the ACLU as we develop model policies for the police department and our robust use of force training, reality-based training. Captain Paramore's here this evening, and he'll be giving you more information on what those programs in great detail. But we work closely with the community not to just develop critical procedures and policies. Body-worn cameras is another one. We didn't just develop those in a police vacuum. We needed the community, groups like the ACLU, other community groups to help us through those. Some of those key accomplishments for us, as I mentioned, body-worn cameras, that's from the core of trying to build trust with the community and the police department. If the police department does not trust if the community doesn't trust the police department, it's very, very difficult. In fact, I'll argue it's going to be impossible for us to be successful without that trust. So body-worn cameras certainly lends that. There's a lot of other benefits besides that from a criminal investigative standpoint, officer safety. There's a lot of things that come into play with body-worn cameras. We also created a critical incident transparent video practice. So when we have critical events within Pasco, rather than waiting many, many months down the road for thorough investigation to be complete, we can get out in front of those final reports and give a high-level overview, again, confidence and trust from the public on what those events look like, and maybe that critical event looks like, and maybe even look at some educational pieces of that critical event that we can help educate the public. We've embedded mental health professionals in with our officers in the field, so dealing with people in behavioral crisis is certainly something that we have all heard about. It isn't getting less. It's getting there's more issues with those. And how do we get our officers to have the resources right at their fingertips? We've embedded those mental health professionals to be right with them in the field. De-escalation and de-escalation training is a buzzword that flies around in law enforcement and the public often. We took and identified key elements of de-escalation in any situation, and we have incorporated that into our training program. So we don't have just a course on de-escalation. It is our philosophy through all of our training aspects. So every discipline of training that we have has elements of de-escalation in it. And it's really at the core of our new training program. From a public trust and transparency standpoint, we took all of our policies and made them forward-facing. So prior to clicking on our website, looking at all of our policies, prior to that, the public had to do a request. We'd have to send, copy them, put them on a CD or print them, and there's volumes of them, and send them out. We have now made those forward-facing, so any member of the public has the opportunity to click on any of our policies. They can walk through them, look at them, and have them at their fingertips. Advanced critical care and AED, Narcan training. Again, looking at saving people's lives. At the end of the day, public safety is the reason we are out there, ensuring quality of life. And if we can have advanced care for our officers in the field when they're rendering aid and save lives, that's been an in-depth focus for us. Hotspotters program, you've heard a little bit about. The Hotspotters program takes those people in the community, whether it be drug addiction or mental health, and our high service level on police department, fire department, emergency rooms. And then, of course, for the police department, we're concerned about those that we may be in or on the verge of critical crisis behavior. And how do we get professionals around the table to identify those key people in the community that we need to ensure they have the attention and the resources, wraparound services of our social services, not just law enforcement, but all the social services that are out there. All of our officers are trained in critical incident training. So when they are dealing with people in crisis, the initial responding officers have some basic initial training to ensure they're getting the best services. We have over 25% of the department that has advanced CIT training, so they partner closely with our mobile outreach professionals that are in the field, and they have advanced training so they can get that immediate care that people might need. A newer program for us is the Hotspotters, or is the Homeless Liaison program. We've just rolled that out this year, and the focus is to ensure that people experiencing homelessness have the resources available to them, and that we can get them either off the streets, or ensure if we can't get them off the streets and into permanent housing or transitional housing, that we can at least get them the services and make sure that they're not falling through the cracks. Again, law enforcement walks that line of being a social service organization, but we certainly can make sure that we can get them to the right social service provider that might be out there. Let me click through this. There we go. As we looked at making sure that we are hiring the very best in the department, we recognized that we had to look at our recruiting efforts and focusing on people that aren't just looking to be police officers, not just people that want to serve a community, but we want holistic people that have an appreciation for serving this community, for serving Pasco. We're a multicultural, diverse community. We're very, very proud of that, and we need those people hired that have that servant's heart. And it takes a little more effort than just screening candidates or getting people to apply for it. I don't want to say it's been difficult for us to find candidates. We've just been a lot more effort at getting those in the door. I mentioned our robust social media platforms, which we're very proud of. I'd be also remiss if I didn't close my portion of the presentation to talk about our national CALEA accreditation and Washington State accreditation. Both of those bodies look at an organization with subject matter experts, peer-reviewed policies and standards, and then ensure that this department's practice matches with those. We just came out of our reaccreditation last week with CALEA, and so I'm proud that we'll be moving forward with another certification for another year with CALEA. We've met those standards. When we worked with the ACLU, I did put a quote down in there from the Washington director for ACLU, Michelle Storms, and her invaluable assistance as we work through a lot of these programs, 2016 and 2017. The perspective that a group like the ACLU brought to us, we certainly valued. Before I move on to the lengthy portion of this, I do want to stop and see if there's any questions before I get to the meat and potatoes with Captain Paramore.
Any questions from council at this point?
Yeah, this is Councilman Serrano. Chief, can you just speak briefly to kind of the reception of how things have changed over the past 5 years from the public perspective of how the police and the interaction is? In particular, we've been flooded with emails suggesting that we defund the police. Now, I don't foresee that happening, and I'm certainly opposed to that. But even if the intent is not to necessarily defund the police, but to reallocate funds for policing programs that you just discussed, can you, one, talk about the reception and public perception of your agency? And two, if there's a better way to get more of this same information out, let us know how we can do that to show that we are allocating funds in a way that our police is forward thinking. Thank you.
Sure, thank you for the question. I think I would look at a couple of things to show success. There's only 2 law enforcement organizations in the state of Washington that have both national and state accreditation. So I think your efforts at policing, at funding a police department certainly can be shown by those successes. But then more grassroots or to the root of the question is certainly our interaction with the public. And we enjoy certainly great comments and interaction. We don't have the level of questions coming in that maybe other organizations do. Our transparency and our willingness to share information. You look at some of those other programs that we had, and I mentioned, on that slide where we're out in the community. You look at what we're doing with homeless people, people that are experiencing homelessness, and of course those in behavioral crisis with mental health. And I think that, along with the overall quality of life in this community, the police department certainly won't take all the credit for the building and people wanting to come to this community, but we are very proud of the fact that we play a part in that quality of life and people wanting to move to Pasco. You've heard me say in other presentations, Pasco is the cool place to live. We're proud of playing a part with the rest of the city departments in getting us there. I don't know if that actually answered all of it or not, but that was my best stab.
No, I appreciate that. And I mean, I think the reality is, as both you and the city manager have said, in the past several years in particular, even prior to the Zambrano incident 5 years ago, Pasco PD has been making strides, but certainly on an accelerated level, I guess you could say, in the past 5 years. So I think it's just important that we recognize your efforts. I am grateful to you for that. And again, if anything hits your mind as far as really positive experiences with the community, I know I've done National Night Out and I've played hoops with some of your, uniformed officers. And of course we schooled the kids. We couldn't let them win. I'm just kidding. I'm terrible. But I do appreciate that community facing policing. So thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
If I could take a
Councilmember
bit of a
Maloney?
stab too. Oh, Councilmember Maloney's on.
Oh, please go ahead.
If I could take a bit of a stab too, I think, I don't think you'd get an argument out of the chief or any of the other officers that more dollars could go into dealing with mental illness and homelessness and substance abuse in the community. And that while the police, I think, are much better equipped to deal with those in the spur of the moment, which they do. And I think they have to take a longer view now than they have, because there is no backstop anymore. They are the backstop for a lot of these folks that they run into. Having a system where these folks could go and be safe and get well costs money. I don't know that the police department budget is the place to take that from, or even that some of that's not even, it's more the role of other agencies, including the state of Washington. Not trying to, be a cop-out or anything here, but it's going to take more than one city to solve the problems that we're faced with societally. And, I think it's a broader discussion. So I think the defund piece that Councilmember Serrano mentioned, while it's quick and easy, and I think it makes a quick point, and, there may be agencies where that should or shouldn't happen. I don't know. I don't feel this is one of them, but I do think that everyone can agree that I've talked to in law enforcement since I've been here and elsewhere in this state, particularly over the last 15, 20 years, that more money needs to be addressed towards dealing with mental illness, substance abuse, and then more recently homelessness.
Right.
This is Mayor Pro Tem Barajas.
Yes, ma'am.
Quick question for you. Going back to your slide for the community programs, I noticed you're missing one of my favorites, actually, the Citizens Academy.
So I was going to put that on a bullet. I couldn't find a cool logo, and so I was trying to find something that was that people could see. But yes, our Citizens Academy, I hope as we come out of COVID into this fall, and with a lot of attention on law enforcement right now, I really do hope that we're able to have several of those this fall and into the new year, that we have enough attendance, people wanting to know more about their police department, that we fill those. Thank you.
If I could just add real quick, not only is it one of my favorites, it's a perspective on the police department level of why they work the way they work, why they make their choices, and why they proceed. So I invite the community, whoever's listening, even our council members, if you'd like to partake in one of these Citizens Academies coming up soon, I hope, please do so. I've also volunteered for your drugs drop off, and volunteer also for the block watch. So I know you guys are in the community. I've seen you. I've worked along and volunteered along with several of your area resource officers. So I thank you very much for all your work within the community. And again, I invite everyone and anyone to participate in the next Citizens Academy. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barajas. Mr. Maloney, you had some comments.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Chief Brodsky, for this presentation. I've been, I've asked a number of questions of you and Chief Metzger on my term, and I had an opportunity to go through the Citizens Academy, 5 or 6 years ago. I think it was 6 years ago. And one of the things I can say is that even from my perspective, looking at the way that use of force is done, it's just dramatically changed, I think, very much for the better. And I am very happy with the progress we have made as a PD in a city. So I guess my question, kind of two questions. I'll preface it with this: is we ask so much of our police officers, and I think Mr. Zabel did a great job of highlighting some of those things that we ask the PD to do, and almost an ever-expanding scope we've seen. Used to be the warriors, and now we ask you to both be that, as well as being social workers and as being, counselors, and there's an awful lot we ask. And I'm very interested in understanding how we can keep that scope manageable so that the police force doesn't have to be a police officer isn't forced to have 3 careers when they're wearing their badge. So I guess one of the questions I have is how many embedded mental health professionals do we have right now?
So Pasco has 2, and the other 2 cities also have 2, and then they have a weekend staff on-call basis.
Okay, thank you. And the other question I have is, we talk about the interface with the homeless population, and I think that's admirable, because we know that is a very high risk, very vulnerable population. But it struck me a little bit in line with my preface is, would we be better off having social workers available to handle our homeless population rather than have the police have to do that? Can you help me understand a little better?
Yes, sir. So those are not their only duties. They're patrol officers that have a focus on people experiencing homelessness. So they're out there handling calls on patrol with that focus. They're the ones for us that have information from social workers, from mental health maybe, where these people can seek treatment. So they're not the true social worker. They're just that bridge. They're out there with that information, helping make sure people don't fall through the cracks as best they can. But we definitely are not the social workers in that area.
Yeah, I understand that by no means is our police force the only ones out there trying to take care of our vulnerable population. So please don't read too much into what I'm saying there. I understand the dynamic is much more complex, and there's a lot more moving parts than we're discussing here. I guess just to preface future conversations from my perspective is I am very interested in understanding how we can make sure that the police scope doesn't continue to expand indefinitely. And I know that's going to be a really tough conversation this budget cycle, looking at how our revenues and additional costs have been due to the pandemic. So I'll be interested in understanding how we can encourage some of our partner agencies, such as the county, to maybe help provide some of their services that they are authorized to do up under state law. That Pasco frankly isn't. And we're really filling their gap by doing a lot of things that we're asking you and your department to do. So anyways, I will be very interested in continuing this conversation over the months ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is Councilmember Alvarado.
Go ahead, Mr. Alvarado.
I'll be brief. Thank you so much for the presentation, Chief Roski. It's definitely, I think it's definitely very needed to have a perspective on, what it is that our police department does in our community and the great strides. I could attest to a number of folks in my community who have gone through either mental health or different types of crisis, and just the professionalism I've seen from the police departments. I remember being at night wearing a hoodie, putting up signs during my campaign, and it was very. I was almost kind of scared to when a police officer came, and just to have just such a great him not knowing who I was or anything like that, just to know like that, that folks are treated well by our community is very important, and just to have experienced that myself is certainly definitely just my experience. I guess so I just wanted to say that I've definitely seen that professionalism and that great sense of pride that the officers take in just that customer service. My question has to do alongside more of training, and maybe that's coming up later down in the presentation. But my main question is, how is our training vetted? And I know that we have a lot more training than probably other police departments, but maybe more of how we vet the quality and who those trainings are from. And I remember there was definitely quite a bit of unrest about when we had the Border Patrol folks and stuff like that. So just curious about the vetting.
Sure. So absolutely. Captain Paramore oversees our training division, and he will touch base on that. Suffice it to say that all of our disciplines are evaluated, and our curriculum continues to expand. But we're with our scheduling, we have a unique opportunity to get all of our officers over 120 hours of dedicated training. But Captain Paramore is going to go into more detail on that.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that, Council. I would just make a quick comment. The event that I participated in that I liked the most was the National Night Out, specifically the group over by Edgar Brown Stadium. They serve amazing food. Anything to do with food, I really enjoy. But no, that experience and going out on several national nights out got to show me firsthand how the police department is involved and have their area resource officers and how involved the community is with them. And it was amazing to me because it also showed me that, Mr. Roski, I don't know if you're going to go over this a little bit later, but there's what's the ratio of police per citizen?
Just over one officer per 1,000.
Per 1,000. There's no way one person can take care of 1,000 people. So what that means is the community has to be involved. And without the community, it just doesn't work. And going to these National Night Out events, it showed me how people would step up to make sure that their communities are taken care of. And when there's an issue, how they were careful not to take the law into their own hands, but to call the resource officer to come and try to be the mediator or that person that they can go to get assistance from. So those experiences were very positive, and I would just encourage everyone to find out where that officer is in your neighborhood and get involved. Should be nice. All right.
Great. Thank you. So with that, I'll introduce Captain Bill Paramore. He commands the Field Operations Division and our Training Division. He's been a police officer with Pasco for 15 years. He's been a major crimes detective, a drug task force detective. He's our use of force subject matter expert. He was part of the implementation team in 2016-2017 when we revamped our use of force policies, trainings, and procedures. He served on the governor's task force on active shooter response and serves as our key instructor in the community for teaching active shooter response, places like the school district, hospital, and stuff like that. With that, Captain Paramore.
Captain Paramore, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. Thank you. Again, thank you to the mayor, to the rest of the council who are not here tonight, the city manager, and again, thank you, Chief Roski. Oh, this is a subject that I'm very passionate about. It's amazing as Chief Roski is giving his presentation. So many things were going through my mind just talking about all the things that a police officer has to know. And use of force is just a small slice of that pie. But that slice is so in depth, and there's so much information that an officer has to make, or that an officer has to have, to make a decision that may happen in a split second. And again, with all the programs that we're involved in, again, just so many things were going through my mind as the chief was giving that presentation. So I'm going to try to go through this as quickly as I can and as thorough as I can. Know that I spend hours teaching our guys and gals at the police department this topic. We set up mostly an entire day just talking about this specific topic. But again, I'm excited to be here and to go through this. So again, there's going to be time for questions at the end. So let's fire it away. Here we go. We always start off our training with our core values, and this is the foundation, the building block that the department stands upon. Passion. We are passionate about policing our community. And we uphold the highest ethics and integrity while being transparent. And I think we demonstrate that using all of the social media platforms and other ways with our public information officer and everybody that we have to get information out to the community. Pride. Pride is not just unique to the police department. If you look at the school district, if you look at other entities within the city, Pasco pride is a thing. I was fortunate to be able to teach a class for the school district a couple of years ago in the active shooter event. And one thing I just love is Miss Whitney, the superintendent of the school district, she says, "We are," and everyone says, "Pasco." And that's kind of the same pride that we take with our community here at the police department. And lastly, we're dedicated to service. We are a full service police department. If you call, we will be there, and we will try to do our best to resolve any issues or answer any questions that you may have. But as we go through this, that is the foundation. That is the building blocks on which we start policing. So as we get into use of force, the first thing we talk about is vicarious liability, and that is something that's done on the behalf of someone else. Just so you guys are all aware, an agency, so Pasco PD can be held liable if there's something that an officer does that we don't train. Even though we go through and we have all this training that we provide, if they do something outside the scope of that training, we can still be held liable based on their actions. I think that's something important to mention. Just to kind of go through our specific training, all of our officers are required to train annually on use of force and in defensive tactics. There's proficiency tests that have to be met, and each officer is required to go through that. A note is the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission has a master instructor program through the city. Through the state. We have it's fortunate that we have 2 master instructors at the state level that teach defensive tactics. We are the only agency in the Tri-Cities that has that. So I think that's something that we're going to hang our hats on as one of the council members asked the chief about some of the additional things that we do. We have 2 master instructors. I think that's an important thing to touch on. Negligence, oh my gosh. So conduct that falls below the standard and behavior established by law for the protection of unreasonable loss or risk of harm. That equals civil liability. We hold our officers to a very high standard, and if they don't meet that standard, we investigate it and we deal with it swiftly. We do not need negligence to pop up in any law enforcement work that we do, to include use of force. Also know that we can be held liable if we fail to train our officers. To give an example, it would be like if I was to give an officer an implement, a tool, like a taser, and I said, all right, here you go, here is a taser, and it's your job to go out, and if you need to use it, use it. But yet I don't give them any type of training on that tool. I don't go over the nomenclature of that tool. I don't go over targeting areas. If I had to use it, where would I shoot the taser at? And then all of a sudden that officer goes out and he uses that taser and he uses it inappropriately per any type of guidelines, deadly force. They shoot someone in the head with it on purpose. We could be held liable because we didn't train them. And they can use that as an argument later on saying, you know what? They gave me this thing, but they never trained me on it. And so some of the examples of some of the stuff that we train our officers on, defensive tactics, firearms, emergency vehicle operation, patrol procedures. You're going to see that be pushed out statewide here very shortly. That was part of a resolution that passed, a ballot measure that passed. Last year, COVID kind of sidetracked that a little bit at the training level, at the academy level, but that's going to be coming down here shortly. Obviously, use of force, search and seizure. There's so many things that we teach on annually. Force. So this is the definition of force that we have in our procedure manual. The effort that is required by police to compel a subject, that compels compliance by an unwilling subject. We do come across that throughout the discourse of our duties. We do come across people who are not always compliant. The definition of excessive force. So that's the amount of force which is beyond the need of a particular event, is not justified in the light of all circumstances confronting an officer, meaning that is unreasonable. What would that look like? Well, we just had a very recent example in Minnesota of what excessive force looked like. That is something that we do not train, and it is a shame that happened. So I'm going to read these two very specifically. I printed them out. So there are federal statutes that guide or that determine, or if an officer is deemed to commit excessive force violations. There are two USC codes that the officer would be used against them, either for prosecution or for civil liability. So the first one is 18 USC 242. It's the deprivation of rights under the color of law. And I'm going to read this, so bear with me. Whoever, under the color of any law, statute, ordinance, regulation, or custom, willfully subjects a person in any state, territory, commonwealth, possession, or district to the deprivation of any rights, privileges, or immunities secured or protected by the Constitution or laws of the United States, or to different punishments, pains, or penalties on account of such a person being an alien, or by reason of his color or race, than are prescribed in the punishment of citizens, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 1 year or both. If bodily injury results from the acts committed in violation of this section, or if such acts include the use, attempted use, or threatened use of a dangerous weapon, explosives, or fire, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 10 years or both. And if death results from an act committed in violation of this section, or if such acts include kidnapping or an attempt to kidnap, aggravated sexual abuse, or an attempt to commit aggravated sexual abuse or an attempt to kill, shall be fined under this title, or imprisoned for any term of years or for life, or both, or may be sentenced to death. That is the first code as far as deprivation of rights under the color of law. That is what an officer will be charged with criminally if that were to happen. Now for the civil liability for deprivation of rights, that's 42 U.S.C. 1983. Every person who under the color of any statute, ordinance, regulation, custom, or usage of any state or territory, or the District of Columbia, subjects or causes to be subjected any citizen of the United States or other person within the jurisdiction thereof to the deprivation of any rights, privileges, or immunities secured by the Constitution and laws shall be liable to the party injured in any action at law, suit, in equity, or other proper proceedings for redress, except that in any action brought against a judicial officer for an act or omission taken in such officer judicial capacity. Injunction relief shall not be granted unless declaratory decree was violated or declaratory relief was unavailable. For the purpose of this section, any act of Congress applicable exclusively to the District of Columbia shall be considered to be a statute of the District of Columbia. It's important to know that our officers know the stakes. They know that if excessive force is used, and they're the at fault or the guilty party, these are the statutes that are going to hold them accountable at the federal level. And we go over that as we do this training. I know that was long, and it can get a little tedious as you read that stuff, but it's important that we do that. Where do our policies come from? Oh my goodness, binding case law, non-binding case law, and evaluating best practices. So binding case law, there are so many case laws that we could go over today. I'm going to go over 3 specifically with you as we talk about use of force. And some of them are pretty old as far as when they were enacted. And some people would think, oh my gosh, you would think that they would maybe look at that and refresh it. But as they were written, they're so good and they apply even to today. Some of those case laws are going to be Tennessee v. Gardner, which goes over deadly force that can be used by a police officer. Graham v. Connor, which is the reasonableness of force or excessive force as it relates to how we're judged. And then also there's a new one, Brian v. McPherson. And that's a pretty new case law over the last 5 years or so. And that kind of is where we get our intermediate tools that we use on a daily basis. So as we go through that, an example of non-binding case law. So so there's 3 districts in the state of Washington at the state level. If one of the districts that didn't necessarily govern our area, but maybe governed the west side of the state, if they came up with, for example, a traffic violation that they deemed was no longer a violation, we would have to abide by that until it was either affirmed or overturned by a higher court. So in the meantime, we have to follow the rules as set forth within that district. So we are constantly reviewing and watching law as it comes out. We're getting legal updates from our city attorney, Mike Rio's office, and from Sean Santa, our local prosecutor, state prosecutor. So that's an example of maybe non-binding case law. Evaluating best practices. As we built this use of force program, we traveled. We went to agencies who kind of went through something similar that we went through. You'll find that police don't like to recreate the wheel, right? Reinvent the wheel. So we'll go to people who have kind of gone through it before we did. But we'll pick and we'll choose things. That's why we send guys to this master instructor course. So they pick up things they can bring back to us at a state level so we can make things better. For example, the RAP. The RAP is a technique or a tool that we have that puts an officer or puts a suspect in a position where they won't get that positional asphyxia that you're seeing in the news right now. It makes them sit up. It gives handles for an officer so they can actually grab onto something to pick them up to move them, as opposed to trying to grab an arm or a leg if they're hobbled and maybe put unnecessary torque on a joint of the body that we don't want to have happen, so there is an injury. So that's that. Let's move on. So just so you guys know, there's no policy that can predict every situation that a police officer is going to go through. I can tell you that in the 15 years of my career, there are times when I go, yep, I've never seen that before. It does happen. But we do know that we are entrusted with the well-reasoned discretion in determining the appropriate use of force in each incident. So we have discretion in what we need to use, the force that we use. And there are so many different factors that we have to take into consideration before we use that force. And I was on a phone call with a reporter from the Herald, and I went through a short version of this presentation with him, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, how do you guys weigh all of that in split second?" I said, "Well, we go through the academy, we go through a PTO training, we have all this training over 120 hours a year. We send guys away to other trainings throughout the state and throughout the region in the Pacific Northwest, also across the country. But know that, hey, when you graduated from school to be a journalist, initially you probably weren't very good at it. You probably didn't ask all the right questions. You probably didn't write the best story. But as you grew, as you went through training, as you learned from your mistakes, you became better. Same with police officers. When we're brand new baby cops, we make mistakes. We mess up, but that's how we learn. And the amount of training that we put our guys through, oh my gosh, it's encyclopedic in nature. There's so much of it. So we make sure that they're using the appropriate use of force in each incident. Here's kind of a chart that we're going to go through, but what's reasonable force? Well, it's force initially to protect themselves, to protect the officer, right? There are times when we're attacked and we have to protect ourselves. Know that as police officers, we're not allowed to use force that you may see in an MMA match. Imagine you're out in the public and someone just attacks you. Well, for your self-defense, man, there's all kinds of things you can do. We're governed differently. We have to use reasonable force. Now, that doesn't mean I can automatically go for an eye gouge or a heel hook or something like that. I have to use what we train. Our goal is not to injure the individual. Our goal is to get them into custody. That's our goal. And that moves on to the second point, to effect a lawful detention. So we detain people, sometimes for a criminal investigation. You're not free to leave. I have to do my job. I have to investigate this. We go to a domestic violence call. Sorry, folks, we got a call. We're here. I can't leave until I figured out what happened. Once I figure out what happened, if a crime was committed, I might have to arrest somebody. But until that point, you're not free to leave. You're being detained. To conduct a lawful search. When people are arrested, we search them. Why? Because certain things are not allowed in the jail, folks. So we need to make sure that everything is out of their pockets, so as when they go to jail, they don't bring anything into the jail unlawfully. To effect a lawful arrest, that's common sense stuff. And then obviously to protect others. If we show up on a scene and someone is committing harm against a member of our public, it is our duty to intervene, and at times we need to use reasonable force. And you have to forgive me, Mayor. I'm used to teaching to a whole crowd, and you're right in front of me, and I keep looking at you, so
okay.
Forgive me. I'm used to moving around, too, and I get stuck in one place. It's, Let your intent be known. So officers should make a reasonable expectation to let the individual know what their intent is. Now, know that sometimes that's not practical. There are times we jump out of our car and we are faced with a split-second decision that we have to make, and I don't got time to make my intent known. But if we can, we should. Oh, Graham v. Connor. This is the one, 1983. This is where the reasonableness of a particular use of force must be judged from a perspective of a reasonable officer. So we call it the reasonable officer standard. Know that what we also get from this is a reasonable officer has the benefit of not having 20/20 hindsight. Meaning, man, if I could have done this different, if I would have watched my body cam video and then go back and do it again, I might do it differently. But know that in a split second when I have to make a decision, I don't have the benefit of that. I don't have the ability to look at a video from my body cam or from a surveillance video from somewhere. So let me just go briefly for those who don't know Graham v. Connor, and this is where I would ask my class if they have ever heard of it before. I see the city clerk shaking her head no, so she's going to get a great presentation here. So in 1983, there was a man, and he was experiencing an insulin issue due to his diabetes. And he decided that he was going to go into a convenience store to get some orange juice. He goes into the convenience store and he sees it's packed. I'm not going to get my orange juice. I need to leave right now and get out of here because I feel it coming on and something bad is going to happen. So I need to go to my friend's house down the street and get some candy or get something to get my blood sugar regulated. He goes running out of the store and he jumps into his car and drives away. Well, a police officer's driving by and goes, I have a guy running out of a convenience store, jumping in his car and speeding away. This does not look right. Maybe he just shoplifted. Maybe he just committed a robbery. He pulls the car over. They get up, and for those who don't know, people who are having insulin issues or experiencing a diabetic issue, sometimes their breath smells as if they'd been drinking alcohol. I've had that happen before in my career. And so they pull the guy out. They start to do some tests on him to see what's going on. And at one point, the officer is going to go take this person into custody, and they resist. The officer didn't know that the person was experiencing a diabetic issue. He believed that they were under the influence. So eventually they had to use force, get them in the back of a police car. Well, that individual eventually sues for excessive force, and it goes to the Supreme Court of the United States. And this is where the reasonable standard comes from for the entire United States, not just for Washington State, but for the whole U.S. So let me back up here one more. Yep, we did that one. So the reasonableness must account for the fact that officers are often forced to make split-second judgments under circumstances that are tense, uncertain, and rapidly evolving. I can tell you that is the God's honest truth. What also comes out of this is that a reasonable officer knows this. Being a cop is dangerous. You don't go into this profession knowing that, oh, it's going to be fine. People are going to, give me hugs and all the time, and I'm going to be well respected. No one's ever going to yell at me. People are going to be happy when I show up. They're never going to be mad that I show up. I never have to write tickets or anything like that. People don't like that, right? We know that this job, there's dangers to this profession. And also we know that there are limitations. Limited time to make decisions. Different abilities, different sizes. We have large officers who are really strong. We have short officers that are not as strong. Different means. Depending on the circumstances, and we'll get into it, I may not have the ability to use every tool on my tool belt, depending on what the situation is. I may be forced into and pigeonholed into using one thing. And then control. I don't always have full control of a situation as much as I would like. We were over at La Palmas today getting a coffee in East Pasco, and I recalled a scene that I went to of a wedding where it got out of control and there was a big fight and it poured out into the street and I was all by myself. And there was 100 people in the street fighting, and I said, you know what? I do not have control of this situation. But I turn my lights on, I turn my sirens on, and they take off running, and I sort of gained a little bit of control in that situation, and I was able to deal with it as more officers showed up. But that's a great example of control. So the three-prong test comes out of Graham v. Connor, and this is so important. People always ask for models and continuums, and they ask, well, the what-if situation. Every cop knows that they have friends, they go to a barbecue, they go out for whatever, and they get the, hey, what would you do if someone did this? Or what would you do if someone did that? I'm sure every profession has that. Engineers have that, teachers have that, probably even city clerks have that. But for law enforcement, this is what we deal with, right? So the very first one is the severity of the crime at issue. What crime was committed? So important. Do I have a jaywalking, which is not even a criminal action, it's a civil citation where I'm going to write someone a ticket for jaywalking across the street, versus someone just shot somebody. They committed a violent assault or a murder. That's the spectrum that we're dealing with, right? So what was the severity of the crime? What is the governmental interest, right? What is the interest to the city of Pasco? What is the purpose of getting someone into custody quickly and dealing with that, or issuing them a citation? Where's that at? Whether the suspect poses an immediate threat to the safety of the officers or others. So crucial. I roll up on a scene. Is my safety in jeopardy? Is the public safety in jeopardy as I'm dealing with it? And then whether the suspect is actively resisting arrest or attempting to evade arrest by flight. There's two prongs to that question, and we'll get into it. Number one, the severity of the crime. Oh, we talked about governmental interest versus individual privacy. When we detain somebody, we're talking about the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution, right? We're seizing somebody at times, and we need to make sure that it's a lawful seizure or not. So the more seriousness of the crime, again, we talked about this, the higher the public interest is to make that arrest. Is it a crime against person or property? Well, if someone keyed a car, is it as important as if someone violently assaulted someone in a domestic violence situation? What's our interest there? What kind of harm does it place the victim in? Someone is a porch pirate and they steal a box from my porch. Is that as big of a deal where I can call Amazon and say, hey, I didn't show up, and they send me a new one? So what kind of force am I going to use against that person if they try to either resist or run? What does that look like? And are there weapons? Oh my goodness, if there are weapons, what does that do to the situation? So it's important to know that this first prong, what is the seriousness of the offense? While it's important to consider, it's the least that the courts use to weigh when we're talking about excessive force claims. This one is the least. It's very important, don't get me wrong, and we teach this to our guys, but it's the least. And officers, they can't make assumptions, right? We can't assume, well, the reason I did this was because, well, what if this guy had a gun? Well, if you didn't have that information at the time, you can't make that assumption. You can't make that guess. Unless they're providing you clues or cues to show that maybe they do have a weapon, right? They go lay on the ground and they tuck their arms in real close and they start digging around in their waistband. Well, most people, normal people, they don't do that. If I have to effect an arrest, 99% of the people, when I say, hey, you have a warrant for your arrest, you're going to go to jail today, can you put your hands behind your back? They comply. They do it. But every once in a while, we get the individual who doesn't. And when they start making furtive movements, those are indicators that would make me believe that maybe they do have a weapon. So the second, and let me go back to this, whether the suspect poses an immediate threat to the safety of officers or others. Again, a measure of the perceived threat and the time available to react is so critical. We teach, and as we go forward with use of force, we teach our officers that if you have the ability to create distance or space, get cover, get more resources there, depending on what those resources are. It could be more police officers. It could be the mental health professional. It could be the SWAT team. It could be a canine. It could be another less lethal tool that the officer may not have with them in the car. If we have the ability to do that, that tends to de-escalate the situation. That is a word that we use throughout training. Again, we get into that. Remember, officers, we're forced sometimes to make these split-second judgments in tense and uncertain, rapidly evolving situations, right? And the time that we have to react to that may limit our force options, right? So depending on how much time I have to use force, it may limit the tools that I have available to me on my belt, or other tools or other resources that are coming into the area. I may not have time for my backup officer to arrive before I have to go in and effect an arrest, right? If there's an active crime scene that's happening right now, if someone called the police and said, someone is stabbing someone right now in a house, well, I don't have the ability to wait for my backup officer to arrive. We have a school shooting, God forbid. Hope that never happens. But I don't have time to wait for 3 or 4 officers to show up before I go rushing into that school. I'm going to do it right now, by myself. And hopefully I can stop that before more people are injured. So this is the most weighted factor of them all. This is the one that the courts deem to be the heaviest, right? Because it's important. Lastly, the third, and some people call it the third and fourth because it's kind of broken up into two. We call it the third, right? Is someone actively resisting arrest? Are they trying to actively resist by running away? Or are they trying to fight with police officers or struggle with police officers? Two different things to go over. So as we went through this building of our use of force policy, right? All officers who get charged or are brought before federal court for excessive force complaints, the Graham factors, those things, that's what is used to measure whether or not the force they used was reasonable, objectively reasonable. But that wasn't good enough. So we added 5 more for our officers to consider. And they're common sense things. The influence of drugs and or alcohol, or the mental capacity of a subject. You ask, well, how can you tell? I can tell you that, again, this comes to time and experience. That an officer that is seasoned, that is tenured, shows up, he'll automatically go, that person's under the influence, I can tell. Or that person is experiencing a mental health crisis right now. I'll give you an example. So I was a brand new police officer, and I'm out with my field training officer, and I'm interviewing a guy, and I do not remember the crime that he was alleged of committing, but it was alleged that he committed a crime. I'm doing my investigation. And your FTO is there to be there to guide you, to help you. You've been through the academy. You know crim law, you know crim procedures, but now it's time to put it into practice, right? It's time to do your job. So I'm interviewing this individual, and I hear him in the back saying, he's going to run. And I'm like, no, he's not. Get away. Let me do my job. Let me talk to this guy. No, he's going to run. How can you tell he is going to run? And I'm talking to him, and sure enough, the guy takes off running. Foot chase is on. Several blocks go. My cardio was good because I just graduated the academy, so I was like a deer able to keep up with him, and eventually we got him into custody. I'm breathing heavy. My FTO comes driving around in the car, not breathing heavy at all because he's done this before. He knows that it's hard to outrun a police car. And so he scoops him up. We get him into custody, and I go, how did you know he was going to run? It must have been, the guy must have seen rookie imprinted on my forehead. But the experience that an officer had, he knew. He could tell just by the way he was standing, shifting his weight, the uneasiness of him. He knew he was going to run. So officers, when they come up to situations like this, they know. They can tell if people are under the influence a lot of the time. The second one, or I guess this would be number 5, the time available for an officer to make a decision. Sometimes we have a lot of time to make a decision. We can slow things way down. If we have someone that has committed a serious offense and they have barricaded themselves into a house, we got time. We can contain it. We can get our resources there. We can start to hail and call out and use all kinds of techniques and tools to get them out. There are some times when I have to effect an arrest and I don't have time, and it has to happen right now. The availability of other officers and or other resources to de-escalate the situation. We've talked about that, so we'll move on. Whether the subject has proximity or access to weapons. Oh my gosh, that is one of the scariest things that officers have to deal with, is if this person has a gun or a knife. I can tell you, there have been a number of times in my career when I've arrested somebody and then I go to search them and pat them down and I pull a gun out of their waistband. And I go, whew, today could have been the day. Thank the Lord that it wasn't. And then other environmental factors or other exigent factors. We call them CEWs. It's a conductive electrical weapon. You guys know them by their branding Taser. That's the company, right? It sparks. It's electricity. Well, if a guy's standing at the gas station next to the gas pump, probably not a good idea for me to use my Taser at that moment because things are combustible. So those are other factors that police officers have to deal with. How high is he? Is he in a tree? Is he on top of a building? Is he running downstairs? What are other environmental factors that I have to deal with? Know that, when we get into number 4 here, people who are under the influence of either drugs or alcohol or experiencing a mental health crisis event, they have a very high pain threshold. They don't feel it as like you or I would as we're standing here sober. I can tell you that I am a wuss when it comes to pain. We all at the time had to get tased and had to get in the police academy. You have to get pepper sprayed because they said they want you to know how it feels. So if it does happen in the field, you'll be able to you'll know how your body reacts and you'll be able to overcome that, right? And I thought to myself, well, this is dumb. No cop ever going to purposely pepper spray me in the field. It's happened several times since I graduated the academy. I have been pepper sprayed by police officers in the face. It is not pleasant. And tasers, oh my gosh, it is very painful. It hurts very badly. And I've had to experience that as well because it's important that I know what it feels like because now I'm on the other end at times. And I know that if I'm using force, if I'm using that taser, I know how it feels. So I'm not just going to be pulling the trigger and holding it down and giving them more time than I need to because I know how it feels. Just enough time to get them into custody, right? Sometimes people who are under the influence, they have a really difficult time understanding what my commands are. Have you ever tried to argue with somebody under the influence? It does not work. You cannot argue with these people. Sometimes they can be very aggressive and volatile. They get very loud. They get angry. They start to yell. And then they're calm. And they're nice. And they're polite. It's a roller coaster of emotions. So the mental capacity of a subject includes both diminished intelligence or mental comprehension, right? So am I dealing with an adult who has a diagnosed, what's the word I'm looking for? A mental health condition like someone who is autistic, right? They may come across as being completely normal, right? They don't have any issues, but then they're not quite understanding what I'm trying to tell them, and things aren't getting through. They can become aggressive and volatile. How am I dealing with that, right? Oh, let's talk about time. So the more time that an officer has to make a decision, the better the outcome tends to be. If I can slow the situation down, de-escalate the situation, more force options are available to me. Again, you're going to see this throughout the PowerPoint slide, and as we talk to our officers, split-second decisions we have to make as we react to the level of resistance that they're providing. We don't go in and just use force to use force. We are using reasonable, necessary force based on the resistance that's provided by the individual that we're trying to apprehend. We went into the time. Here's some. So people, what kind of additional resources do you have? Well, we have police resources and we have resources outside of what we have, right? So the chief talked about all the programs that we're involved in, right? Backup, right? More cops showing up. CIT, we have guys who have the 40-hour, more training. All of our K-9 guys are going through the 40-hour CIT training. We do have a K-9. Man, what a great tool. People are afraid of dogs. And sometimes just having a dog there will cause them to just give up and get taken into custody without any incident. It's a great tactic and tool. We have detectives. We have crisis negotiators, people who are trained to talk people out of committing suicide or attempting to commit suicide or just giving up, right? SWAT, our records division, they provide us with so much information. I would be remiss not to mention other available resources like the second responders, our firefighters. Okay, people are paying attention. Very good. Our utility services. Do we need to cut power to a facility, to a building, or turn the water off? Other local, state, and federal authorities. We have the FBI, DEA. We have all these task forces. Our school district. We have such a great partnership with our school district. Public transportation. They are there for us if we need them. And also our private businesses and industry. And mental health services. Oh, man. Does someone have access or proximity to weapons? Super important. And I know that you guys had this given to you before, so I don't want to read every bullet point as I go through this. But man, it's critical. Other environmental factors, the weather. So am I going to prone somebody out? So when I talk about prone, so forgive me if I use police terms, right? So people, what's prone mean, okay? Having them lay on their stomach, right? Get down in a position of disadvantage so I can take you into custody safely. If I'm going to prone them out onto the ground, if it's 110 degrees outside, is it reasonable for me to have them do that on the asphalt? No, because they could get burned. Now, depending on what? The severity of the crime. Is the person a danger to others or to the officer? Well, it may not be reasonable, but it may be the only thing I have. So it's just things to consider. Population, traffic density, other hazards. We talked about gas, electricity, elevation. Are we in a small room or a small hallway? If we are, my options are limited. There's certain techniques that we train our guys. If we're in a really small space, if I do a straight armbar takedown, for example, where I do this big C-step and I take them down to the ground, are they going to bang their head into the wall because we're in such a tight space? Probably. So am I going to use that technique? No. I'm going to do something completely different. All right. Duty to intervene. This is so critical, right? And I'm going to read this verbatim because I want everybody to hear this. An officer present and observing another officer using force that is clearly beyond that which is objectively reasonable. So it's beyond. It's not reasonable. Under the circumstances, shall, not may, not possibly will, shall. This is a directive. When in a position to do so, safely intercede to prevent the use of such excessive force. And then officer shall promptly, immediately report these observations to a supervisor. If an officer is with another officer who's using excessive force, per our policy, they are mandated to stop that from happening and then report that to the supervisor. This has been in there for a long time, folks. This isn't brand new. This wasn't just something that popped up because of what's going on today in the world today. This has been in there for a while. Whew. The chief didn't give me a lot of time, so I'm going to try to fly through this. Okay, so let's get into our continuum. So, we call it a use of force model. People ask, do you have a continuum? Do you have a model? Yes, we have both. It's same. So we go over the levels of resistance, the levels of control, and the use of force model. Here we go. And I'm going to kind of blow through this. Here we go. So there are 5 levels of resistance and you'll see this as Officer Stipend.
So sorry to interrupt. This is Councilmember Alvarado.
Yes.
I very much apologize for the interruption, but I think given the importance of this, I certainly would love to take your time.
Oh, okay. Well, let me back up then. All right, here we go. Oh, did I go back the right way? Okay, here we go. All right, let's read these. Okay. So the level of resistance is what the subject is doing, right? How is he resisting? What cues or what is he doing? Is he balling up his fist like he's going to strike me? Is he taking a bladed stance? Is he giving me that 1,000-yard stare? Is he trying to run away? We call it, is he being a non-helper? Is he just getting tense? We call it isometric muscular tension, right? So when I go to grab an arm, instead of him putting it behind his back, like, again, we talk about 99 out of 100 people doing, he tightens up, he tenses up, and it doesn't allow me to do that. And it's a struggle, right? And I have to out-muscle him or use a technique that that our guys are trained with and we're trained with. So that would kind of be the level of resistance that's kind of provided by the offender, right? They are defined by objective, identifiable levels, which we're going to go through. It's going to be easy to follow and comprehend. There are so many reasons why someone may want to resist arrest, right? As we go through it, and you think, why didn't he just comply and get taken into custody? Well, you don't know. Maybe it's his third strike, and he knows that if he gets arrested, he's going to go to prison for the rest of his life. Who knows? At the time that the officer's showing up, I have no idea what's going on in this gentleman or woman's life, and I have to deal with it. And I don't read minds. I don't have the availability of 20/20 hindsight, right? I can't go back and look at their criminal history or look at what the reason that they're getting maybe an arrest warrant or dealing with something. I don't have that ability. So I can only use with what I have at the time. All right, but we talked about this with the Graham v. Connor, right? It could be a medical issue that I don't know about, right? I can tell you that right before I got promoted to captain, I was a sergeant on our street crimes unit, and I was dealing with someone parked in the parking lot of the bank at 20 in Court. And someone was like, oh, it looks like he's passed out or slumped over at the wheel. I get over there and I'm looking at the guy, and I don't know why, and maybe it's experience, but I looked at him, I go, are you a diabetic? And he goes, yes, I am. Well, I trust, but I also verify, right? So I call our second responders, our Pasco medics, and they show up. Again, I joke about the second responders. I love we have such a great relationship with our fire department and our medics. They show up, they do a blood sugar test, and they go, whoa, man, we need to give you some sugar. And so they give him a syringe full of sugar, still did nothing. So they had to load him in the ambulance, give him an insulin bag, and away they went, to the hospital. Could he have been DUI? Maybe. But he wasn't. He was diabetic, and he was going through something. I was able to figure that out, fortunately. Oh man, hearing impaired or a language barrier. How do we deal with that? I don't speak Spanish, but fortunately in my career up to this point, I haven't had a problem with it because I've always been able to either find someone there that spoke Spanish or utilize one of our other officers who speaks Spanish. It hasn't been an issue, and it doesn't. And typically, it's not an issue. Let's go through. So here are our levels of resistance, right? So when we're talking about resistance, we're not talking about the police officer's response. We're talking about what the individual subject is doing. What kind of levels is he giving us? They're compliant, passive, active, aggressive, and aggravated aggressive. Let's get into each one of those. Someone who's compliant. That's somebody who's just listening, right? I do a traffic stop. I pull them over. I say, hey, man, you weren't wearing your seatbelt. You probably get a red light camera ticket. But hey, can I see your license, registration, and insurance? And they give it to me. That person is compliant. They either get a warning or they get a ticket and they're on their way. That's someone who is compliant. Passive resistance. And remember, I talked about, for those who can see this slide, we talked about the wrap, right? We talked about a tool that we have that we can put somebody a position in so they don't get that positional asphyxia that we talked about. In this picture, you'll see that. It's the wrap. We're training with it here. That's one of our officers getting put into it. So our officers can actually train how to put it on somebody, a real life person, right? So it's not theory, they're putting it into practice. So somebody who is passive is someone who is just that non-helper, right? So I go to take them into custody, or I try to move them and they just fall limp to the ground. Or I'm not going anywhere, right? So they're not fighting me. They're not getting tense and trying to resist me. They're just not going to help me. They're going to lay down. Nope, you're going to have to take me to jail the hard way, guy. I'm going to lay down. Okay, very good. They hold on to a fixed object and they don't let go. Active resistance. So people think active resistance and they think, oh man, they're fighting the cops. No. Active resistance is, we talked about that isomuscular tension, metric tension, where they're trying to defeat the officer in an attempt that's trying to control them, right? Or They're trying to break the grip of the officer as they're grabbing their arm, they're trying to pull away. Their intent is not to do harm to the officer. Their intent is to get away. That's someone who is actively resisting. Now, it's important that as we talk about our model, as we talk about use of force, there's a clear break, a clean break here, right? And that break is the subject's intent to do harm. Those first 3 levels of resistance that we talked about, yeah, they're not complying, except for maybe the first person, the compliant person that we talked about. But the other 2, they're not complying. They're not doing what I'm asking them to do. They're resisting me. But their intent is not to do harm. Moving forward in the next 2 levels of resistance is the violator, the offender, the subject's intent to do harm. The definition that we have for imminent threat, it refers to an impending violent act or violent resistance which an officer reasonably believes will occur based on the totality of the circumstances. That's a lot of legal terminology there, but basically it's a pretty good definition. So I'm going to move on. Aggressive resistance. So this is a subject who is going to either harm an officer or he's going to harm other. We talked about some different cues, right? Taking that fighting stance. What does that look like? Having an aggressive physical restraint. So let me give you an example, and this kind of goes back to the training, right? And here's a scenario that our officers dealt with years ago when I was on patrol. I was a baby cop. My corporal and another officer responded to an area of town where they were going to arrest somebody on a warrant, which we do daily. We arrest people on warrants all the time. And officers, they can get complacent, or an offender can give them cues that they may look at and think, oh, I know exactly what he's doing based on how much time they've had on the job. So I know, in my experience or my course of doing my duty, when I arrest somebody, there's sometimes things that they don't want to go with them to jail. They may say, can you just leave my wallet with my mom? I don't want my watch and my jewelry to go in my property to jail. I just like to leave it here at the house. That's very common. We deal with that all the time. So in this specific incident, when these 2 officers were going to go make an arrest, what does the guy do? He's taking his watch off. He's taking his ring off. He's taking his necklace off. So the officers, when you talk to them afterwards, they thought, oh, I just thought he didn't want to take his stuff to jail. That's what I thought he was doing. But what was he really doing? He didn't want his watch to get broken in the scuffle. He didn't want his nice necklace to get ripped off of his neck in the scuffle. He knew it was about to be on. That person is what we experience, what we would call being an aggressive resistance, right? He's going to fight. You ain't going to take me to jail. It's going to happen. And then aggravated aggressive, right? This is someone who's going to attack with a weapon, right? We have a picture here. It's a pretty graphic photo, but it's of an officer getting hit in the head with what appears to be a club, and he's bleeding. That's not a Pasco officer. It's a stock photo that I pulled from another presentation. It's resistance or attacks with a firearm or extreme physical force. A lot of people don't know this, but when we talk about deadly force, it doesn't just mean a firearm or a knife or a blunt object. Deadly force can be if someone is injured, substantial bodily injury, right? So if a bone gets broken, or they lose vision, or something like that happens, that can be considered deadly force. Now we get into the levels of control. Okay, so now we talked about the levels of resistance. We talked about what the offenders are doing, right? Now we're going to talk about what the officers have. Okay, we have 3 levels. We have low level of force, intermediate force, and deadly force. So we must only use the amount, I'm going to read this verbatim. Officers must only use the amount of force that is objectively reasonable to overcome resistance in order to take a lawful police action. Super important. Again, we talked about this. Could you imagine getting into a fist fight on the street, or someone cold cocks you or sucker punches you, and you have to be measured in your response? I don't get to do whatever I want. I don't get to kick him while he's down. I don't get to, drop the people's elbow on him, if you will, right? I have to be measured in my response, right? I can only use techniques that are legally, medically, and tactically sound. Everything that we teach to our guys has to go through those prongs. I just can't do whatever I want. I can't break an arm. I can't do an arm bar. I can't do an arm bar and break his elbow because I got punched in the face, right? So I just want you guys to think about that. Must be proportionate to the circumstances and the level of resistance encountered by the officer. It has to be proportionate. It can't be way out of bounds, right? I can't have, if I can think of an example, I can't have someone come up, and I've had this, I've seen an officer get slapped in the face before by a lady, just bap. Well, just because he got slapped in the face doesn't mean he can pull his gun out and shoot her, right? That would not be proportionate, right? I think everybody would agree with that. So everything that we do has to be proportionate. As the level of resistance increases, right? So as what the subject is doing, if his level of resistance is increasing, right? So maybe he started out as passive, right? And he was just a non-helper, just laying there limp. And then all of a sudden, he started to actively fight me without weapons. So he goes from that compliant or that passive person, and now he's all the way up to aggressive, right? My level of force can then go up. I'm going off of the cues that I'm getting. I'm not starting way above. I'm going off of the cues that the offender is giving me. So let's go over what low level of force is. As we break down our model, so someone who is compliant. A lot of people don't know this, but just me showing up is a level of force. I say that to people, they go, well, why would it be that an officer just showing up is a level of force? Does me not showing up in my uniform elicit some sort of response? Mm-hmm. Right? So sometimes it's a good response. Sometimes it's like, hey, I need help. My son is choking on something. Come help. We've had that. CPR. We go rushing in and we give CPR, or we give naloxone, known as Narcan, for someone who is overdosed on something, right? We run in there and we do life-saving measures, right? They're happy to see us. Sometimes they're not, right? Sometimes there's a crime that's occurred, and it's my job to show up and make an arrest. They're not happy to see me. I elicit some sort of response. For someone who's compliant, I'm just talking with them. I'm using my verbal cues. I'm just having communication and dialogue with them. I may touch them. I may say, hey, I know you're here and you're being super compliant, but hey, I need you to come out here. I may escort them out, right? I may just grab them by the arm and say, hey, let's go out here. We're going to do that. That's fine. I might have to handcuff them, right? Everyone goes to the back of my police car, what? Gets handcuffed. Then we got someone who's being passive, right? Someone who is that non-helper. Well, what do I have the availability to do if someone just lays limp? Well, I get to outmuscle them. I get to pick them up. I get to use all those God-given muscles. But that doesn't mean I can't use the stuff that I had before, right? That doesn't mean I can't try to talk to them first, right? That doesn't mean I can't try to communicate with them and say, hey, buddy, you're going to jail today. I appreciate you laying there and thinking that this is going to get you out of it, but hey, man, I really need you to get up. Can you help me out? I hate to have to use more force on you than I have to. Can you please get up? And if I can't, I'll have to outmuscle them. I'll have to pick them up. Has that happened before? Yes. And then for those active individuals, pardon me, those people who are the non-helpers, right, or the people who are tensing up, right, that isomuscular tension that they're providing, or they're trying to run away, they're trying to evade arrest by flight, they're trying to flee. I can use a vascular neck restraint. That doesn't mean I'm actually squeezing. It's a takedown, right? It's just that where the head goes, the body goes. A lot of people don't know that. Try this sometimes if you have an unruly toddler, right, and they want to try to act all crazy and stuff. If you can control their head, there's nothing they can do, because where the head goes, the body goes. Try it sometime. Not on your wife or your spouse. Only on your toddlers. A pit maneuver, right? Which is a maneuver that we teach our guys on spitting cars out in a pursuit, right? To stop that pursuit as quickly as we can, so there's no potential loss of property or life, right? Control tactics. It could be a takedown. It can be an escort. Pressure points or pain compliance. You have pressure points all over your body. And if I have to use pain to get you to do something, then I'm going to do it, right? Is it pretty? Is it something that we like to do? No, but we're doing it off of the cues of what the violator or the subject is doing. And then I have my baton. I'm not using it as an impact weapon at this time. I'm not hitting them, right? But I'm using it as something I can cantilever, right? Something if I need to get, we teach a technique where if someone is turtling on the ground and they have their arms under their body and they're laying face down in the prone position. We talked about prone, right? I can use that stick to wiggle that arm out and use it as a cantilever. So those are all what we would consider low levels of force. But just because I may be at the active level, right? Because I can do a takedown, right? Like a figure 4 takedown or a straight arm bar takedown. Well, before I do that, I may try to de-escalate the situation and use my words. Try to talk them into handcuffs. Doesn't mean that always works. Sometimes it doesn't, but that's the goal. Brian McPherson, more case law. This is where our intermediate tools and techniques come from. Let me set it up for you. In Southern California, for all those who don't know about Southern California, all the jurisdictions that are down there, they kind of mush together. And every one of those little small cities that kind of, and they may border on like an overpass. On one side of the overpass is one city, on the other side is another city. They all have different police departments. So, Mr. McPherson was driving down the road one day, and he got a ticket for not wearing his seatbelt in one jurisdiction. He was dropping a friend off. Drops the friend off, is leaving, crosses over into the adjacent jurisdiction, gets pulled over again within a very short period of time. He was very agitated. When the officer approaches, he jumps out of his car and starts slapping his legs and talking to himself and getting really angry about getting pulled over. Not necessarily pointing towards the officer, but at himself. The officer probably didn't do a great job writing his police report, and we always tell guys, if you want to make bad case law, write a lousy police report, because that's the fastest way to get it done. At some point during this altercation, the officer uses his taser, and he tases this individual. He falls down, and he loses several teeth as he hits the ground. He gets arrested and swooped off to jail. An excessive force claim was filed. At that time, there was no case law that governed the taser. No one had ever filed an unlawful use of force claim about the taser. So this kind of goes all the way through the court, and this is where we get intermediate tools. So out of this case law, it says that not all non-lethal force is equal. It's not in a singular category. Certain options have the potential to cause injury or substantial pain. Long, long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, back when Chief Roski was a baby cop, and they just started using pepper spray, if an individual didn't comply with commands, just a verbal, like, hey, turn around, put your hands behind your back, you're under arrest, and he goes, no! They used to be able to go, and pepper spray him. At the time, it was good. It was okay. It was within the law. Things have changed since then. What happens? Stuff goes through the court system. Case law is generated. We talk about where does our procedures and our policy come from? It comes from case law. All right. These options are, and so this is where, so it's crazy, right? So the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals is the one that heard this case, and this is where they come up with intermediate law, intermediate case, right? The problem is they don't really define it. They just call it intermediate force. Well, here's the definition that we have come up with at the Pasco Police Department. Intermediate force is a level of force greater than low level, which we've discussed, which has the potential to cause reasonable injury or substantial pain. But it's neither intended nor likely to cause substantial bodily harm or death. Remember how I talked about deadly force and what that was? And I kind of defined it as substantial bodily harm, where like, loss of limb or a loss of a sense or a broken bone. All right, so intermediate force justification. It has to be an imminent threat. It has to be happening, and we defined imminent threat earlier, right? It requires the subject having the intent to do harm against the officer, which we talked about. And just so you know, mere resistance to police control, that's not sufficient. Just because they're tensing up or they're doing certain things, not good enough. You have to have more. So as we have our use of force model or continuum, here is that aggressive, right? It's to the right of the subject's intent to do harm. If you look below, you see the intermediate force. Here are the techniques and tools that we teach to use at that point. Impact tactics like kicks and strikes. Our OC spray, that OC is oleoresin capsaicin, right? It's our pepper spray. It's really hot. It's terrible. CEW, that's our tasers. VNR. At level 2 and 3. Level 2, and we'll get into that as we teach a little bit about VNR, but it's level 2 is starting to apply pressure with giving commands like, hey, if you don't stop it, I'm gonna make you go unconscious. And then level 3 is the actual squeezing of the carotid arteries. Baton and impact weapon. So Impact weapons can be, we have a 37 millimeter launcher that shoots a soft projectile at someone. That is a distance, less lethal option, right? So I don't have to get up close. I have the ability to create that space. K9. And then we have pepper ball. Deadly force is that degree of force which is likely to produce death or serious bodily injury, not limited to the use of firearms. Okay? So if I have my impact munition, we talked about that 37 millimeter launcher. If we're within 5 yards of an individual and we shoot them with it, that's considered deadly force. Will it kill them? Probably not, but it could, and that's why it's considered deadly force. It can also be used as a result from a force option that we teach being used improperly. Super important here, guys. Sanctity of human life. I'm going to read this verbatim. The department respects the value of every human life, and the application of deadly force is a measure to be employed in the most extreme circumstances. Here's deadly force.
Could I jump in here for a second?
Sir, yes, sir.
This allied about sanctity of life actually came as a result of our conversations with the community group and ACLU a few years ago, and that's how that wound up getting into the use of force policy. Matter of fact, I think that was Pete Rieger's wording, if I remember right. Yeah.
Thank you. So this is the aggravated aggressive resistance, right? This is them coming at us with the intent to use deadly force against an officer or others. We can use our firearm, our impact munitions at less than 5 yards, baton in deadly force areas, and obviously ramming with our patrol cars. These are super rare, and it requires a lot for us to have to do this. This isn't something that we take lightly. It's not something that we want to do. Again, it's based off of the resistance that the offender is providing. So that's kind of them in a row. But this is, so people ask, do you have a use of force continuum? Do you have a model? Yes, we do. And here it is. So we talked about, so each bold option, as we were going through this, at the very top there were the bold options, right? But we said, that doesn't mean you can't use less levels of force, right, to try to de-escalate the situation. So each bold option within the levels of control represent the highest level of force available. However, other force options should be considered to help de-escalate the situation. This is attached to with our manual. We use this to teach our officers. It's very helpful when it comes to writing their reports. So now let's get into deadly force and the justification for it. So again, we talked about they have to be displaying that aggravated aggressive behavior, and it has to meet 4 specific elements. Someone has to have the ability, the opportunity, imminent jeopardy, and preclusion. This all comes from Tennessee v. Gardner, and we'll get into that case law here shortly. So the ability exists when a person has the means or the capability to cause grave injury, serious bodily harm, or death to an officer or another. So, for example, if I come across a 5-year-old who's holding a kitchen knife, and I show up to a call, does he have the ability to do serious bodily injury to me as a police officer with all the training and all the vests and all the stuff that I have? Probably not. They have to have the ability to do so. What gives the suspect, in literal physical sense, the capability to cause substantial bodily harm or death? And we have to articulate. We have to be able to articulate that. We just can't guess it or assume it. It has to be articulated by the officer. They have to be able to say what it is. Opportunity. It exists when a person is in a position to effectively resist an officer's control or to use force or violence upon the officer or others. So, if I was standing behind the counter here that you guys are sitting at, and I had an officer, or excuse me, I had an offender over here, way over here, and he says, I'm going to stab you with this knife. Does he have the opportunity at that point to do it? No, because there is a physical barrier between me and him. Now, if he starts to move forward and then gets beyond that barrier, different story. Then his opportunity does go up. But initially, no, he doesn't. So am I going to shoot him from behind this barrier here, and he's way over there? Is that going to happen? Probably not, because he doesn't have the opportunity to do so. So just remember, this isn't a 3D space. This isn't on TV. It's not two-dimensional, right? There are things that get in the way. Trees, cars, houses, you name it. So that's why we teach our guys to try to maintain distance when possible. Create that space. Do a tactical withdrawal if you can do it, right? If it can be done, we teach that. And if we do that, we're removing the element of opportunity. So therefore, we won't have to use deadly force. That's our goal. Remove that opportunity. Imminent jeopardy is based on all the facts and circumstances confronting the officer. If the officer reasonably believes that the subject poses an imminent threat to the life of officers or a third party, and the officer must act immediately to prevent death or serious bodily injury. There was a local police department where they received a call of a domestic violence case. When the officer gets to the house, he can hear screaming inside. He walks inside the house and he sees a male on top of a female and he is stabbing her. Is she at imminent jeopardy of dying? Yes. Do we get confronted with that stuff in law enforcement? Yes. Is it ugly? Yes. Do we want to do it? No. There's no police officer that likes to see that stuff. I have seen things in my career, sometimes you wish you could soap and wash it out of your eyes. But we do what we have to do because we get called upon. It's our duty, it's our calling, it's our oath that we take. Again, we're going off of the actions of the offender. We're going off of the levels of resistance or what they are doing. We're not just automatically doing it just because we show up. Just so you know, a suspect cannot imminently jeopardize himself. Meaning, and so when I was a brand new police officer, we would get calls of a suicidal subject, and they would say, "You need to help this guy." And we would get these orders from our mental health professionals. They say, "You need to take him into custody, and we need to get him to a mental health facility so we can give him treatment." Okay, so let me get this straight. You want me to go inside, confront someone who is suicidal, possibly use force against them, maybe even deadly force to keep them from committing suicide, from killing themselves? No sense, right? Doesn't make any sense. So we have changed our way of thinking. We have changed our training. Sometimes we'll try to get them as many resources as we can, either on the phone or in person. We have our MHPs that are with us. We have all these resources, all these tools and techniques that we have. Sometimes the best tool on a subject like that is to what? Walk away. Hey, man, Godspeed. I've given you every resource I've had. I'm sorry. Quick story. Guy was suicidal at a location in Pasco. I was a supervisor. It was my first time as a supervisor. Super stressed out, right? Because now I'm in charge of the city, right? The chief at the time said, "Hey, man, when you're working swing shift and you're the sergeant on duty, you are the chief of police while I'm sleeping." Woo! Okay. So my very first suicidal subject, I'm nervous because I'm like, "Oh man, please don't commit suicide. Let's get out. Let's do this right." I call him on the phone. He goes, "I'm going to kill myself." "Well, how are you going to kill yourself? Do you have a gun? Do you have access to weapons?" He goes, "No, but I might stab myself." "Okay. So nobody else is in the house?" "No one else is in the house. I'm here by myself." "Okay, well, so I know that no one's in danger. I know that he has a knife at best, right? No firearms in the house." "Well, what can I do to get you out?" "Well, I want a pack of cigarettes and I want beer. And if you give me those things, I'm going to come out." "Okay, no, I'm not going to do that." "You have to do that." And he starts getting really mad at me. I hang up on him. Boop. He calls me back. "You can't hang up on me. Now I want a carton of cigarettes and a case of beer." Click. I hang up on him. He calls me back. I said, "Listen, man, I am just here to get you help. I have a mental health professional here that's ready to talk to you. Will you just come out and talk to them so we can get out of here and leave you alone?" "Okay, fine." And he walks out and he gets the help that he needs. That happens all the time, not necessarily us hanging up on people. That was a very rare case of it. But we are constantly bringing our MHPs. I think last month I got the stats, was it like 54-ish people that our mental health professionals have helped, that have been in the cars and are ingrained with us. When we had the recent protesters come in and they talked to us about things that we need to do to change and our policies and our procedures, they were shocked to find out that we have MHPs embedded with us in our cars. They had no idea. They were asking for that. We already have it. They're there. They're doing it. We're giving that resource to our community. Okay, sorry, I had a little squirrel moment there. Let me get back. Preclusion. It's a big fancy word. All other lesser alternatives have been reasonably considered or exhausted prior to the use of deadly force to include disengagement. Meaning, I've checked every box. There is nothing else that I have available to me right now that I have to do but use deadly force. If I have individuals coming out there trying to shoot me, they're coming out, they're actually shooting at me. All I got left is deadly force, guys. That's all I got. Okay. Again, we talk about it has to be reasonably and with the totality of the circumstances. So let me get into Tennessee v. Gardner here. This is the case law that determines deadly force. This happened back in 1978, I believe. It was in the South, Tennessee. That's where the case law comes from. This is a Supreme Court decision based on deadly force. There was a black teenager that was committing a burglary at a residence in Tennessee. Police were called. They show up. The teen runs away and starts to jump a fence and get away. The officer pulls his firearm, shoots, and kills him. At the time, that was legal in Tennessee law. They were allowed to apprehend a fleeing felon by using deadly force. That case went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and this is what we got. Officers may use deadly force to prevent the escape of a fleeing felon who the officer has probable cause to believe that has committed a violent felony crime and is an imminent threat to human life if escape should occur. So, there's a couple things we have to have here. Probable cause that they committed a violent offense. Like, did they kill somebody? Was deadly force that I used necessary to prevent the escape? Meaning, if I didn't shoot this guy to stop him from running away because he was about to go kill somebody else, if I was unable to stop him, someone else may be in danger. And I have to give some kind of warning. I say, stop, police, I'm going to shoot. The use of deadly force to prevent, so this came from the case law. This was an excerpt from it. The use of deadly force to prevent the escape of all felony suspects, whatever the circumstances, is constitutionally unreasonable. So just because they committed a felony doesn't mean I can shoot them. They said it's not better that all felony suspects die that they escape. Where the suspect poses no imminent threat to the officer, no threat to others, the harm resulted from failing to apprehend him does not justify the use of deadly force. So we have people run from us all the time, and you know what? Sometimes they're fast and we don't catch them. And yet, guess what? Just because they get away doesn't mean as they're about to be far, far away and I'm about to lose them, I can't shoot them. Right? Depends. We talked about what I needed. Let's get it. I'm blowing through this, guys, and I know I'm burning time here. So de-escalation. Not every violent confrontation can be de-escalated. That's super important. We can try as much as we will, but there are times when you cannot de-escalate a situation. We should gather all the information, assess the risk, assemble our resources, slow things down. We talked about this. It occurs when officers give advisement or warnings, right? We have an individual who barricades himself in a house. We contain it. We call into the house. We ask them to come out over our PA system. Our cars are equipped with them. We do that. We try to use lower force options and tactics and alternatives to using higher levels of force. Officers should recognize that they may withdraw to a position that is tactically more secure. We've talked about this. If you can see where this slide is going, where this presentation is going, things are getting hammered into you right now, right? What's getting hammered into you right now? Hey, if you can create space, if you can tactically withdraw, if you can bring in more resources to potentially bring this conflict to a peaceful resolution or use the lowest intrusive amount of force as possible, we teach that. We try to do that. The ability for officers to de-escalate is greatly influenced by the immediacy of the threat, right? What is happening right now? Am I walking into an apartment where someone is stabbing somebody? Well, I would say the immediacy of the threat is pretty high. Suspect may create an immediacy of threat regardless of the officer's attempt to de-escalate. I may try as hard as I can to do it. And at the very end, they may say, screw it, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to try. I'm going to ramp it up as a suspect, as a violator. I'm going to use a high level of resistance. So we shouldn't rush our actions, right? We should. There's case law out there, and you'll have to forgive me. I'm not sure which the exact site is, but officers can create jeopardy, right? If we rush into a situation without slowing down and without getting more information, and by us rushing in, we have to use deadly force, we could be held liable because we created the jeopardy. Officer created jeopardy. We train that. I'm beating a dead horse here, so I'm going to skip that one. Officers can then make a decision based on the assessed risk, information gained, and then coordinate our response. Let's see here. Authorized tools, and we're almost done. There's certain tools that we authorize as a police department to carry. We went through them briefly as we went through with our slides to show what's on our duty belt, right? Intermediate weapons. You have a picture right here on the screen of a taser. That is the taser that we carry. It's the X26P, and we have the X26. Oleoresin capsaicin, that's our pepper spray. Batons, we use a vascular neck restraint. You'll see things in there you'll hear things like VNR, LVNR, XVNR. Those are just different ways to apply the technique. And then we have our 37 millimeter projectile launcher. We also have a pepper ball launcher, but that's not used very much. Vascular neck restraint. This is a topic in the community that everyone's talking about. Talking about chokeholds, right? You hear chokeholds everywhere right now in the media. Vascular neck restraint is not a chokehold. A chokehold limits air, the ability of someone to breathe. Back in 1982, LAPD got rid of, they called it an arm bar chokehold. And what that chokehold was is they would either put their arm or use their baton, and they would specifically cut off the airway, right here with the larynx, their voice box, and their windpipe. So then fast forward to the Rodney King riots. Right before Rodney King happened, they got rid of LVNR. They got rid of it. At the time, it was argued, hey, if you get rid of this, the only other thing that we have right now, this is before taser, the only thing we have as far as lethal goes on an officer is a stick. That's all we got. And they said, well, we are willing to forego the risk of you hitting someone with a stick over a VNR. Then Rodney King happened, and you had multiple officers using a stick. And possibly they could have used a neck restraint to take that person into custody quickly without having all those bad optics. So VNR does not restrict your airway. It restricts blood flow. Doesn't stop blood flow. That's super important. I need to hammer that home. We are not cutting off blood flow to the brain. We are restricting it, causing someone to fall asleep. So level 1 VNR. It's just a takedown. I put my arm around them, and I said, hey, man, get on the ground, you're under arrest. I just use the leverage of controlling their head and their neck to take them down to the ground. That's level 1. There's a preparatory phase, right? Hey, get on the ground, you're under arrest. Application phase, which I do the technique, and then I complete it by putting them into custody in the handcuffs. We train this. Level 2 is a little different. Level 2 is I'm going to squeeze a little bit and say, hey, man, if you don't comply right now, I'm going to put you to sleep. They can breathe. Just around. So lateral, a lateral vascular neck restraint. Think of lateral. Who played football, right? A lateral is what? Straight across or back, right? So it's not in the front. It's not forward pass, right? It's not the front of the neck. It's to the side or to the rear. That's lateral, right? So if he still doesn't comply, then, let me back this up here. So Spokane has, so they went to this, and they were mandated by their, I believe it was their council, to do a study, and it was, hey, I need to see how effective this is at level 2, meaning when you start to squeeze. 90% of the offenders gave up at level 2. They weren't put unconscious. They gave up. Yep, nope, I don't like this. I give up. Then we get to level 3, where we apply enough pressure to the sides of their neck, not to the front. They can still breathe to the sides, where potentially they could pass out. Know that not everybody is built that way. Some people don't get passed. Some people don't pass out because of the way that their body is made, right? Everyone's different. If it doesn't work, we transition. We do forced transitions. Once they're in custody, we immediately get them checked by our medics, and then they go to the hospital for medical clearance prior to being booked into the jail. We put them in a recovery position. This is super important. They get laid on their side with their knees brought to their chest. They get patted on the back. Hey, wake up, buddy, wake up. And then they go to the hospital. Moving on to a conductive energy weapon, or the taser. it creates what's called neuromuscular incapacitation. Two probes leave that weapon, and the electricity flows between the two probes. What happens is it's the worst Charlie horse of your life all over the affected muscle area for 5 seconds. We try to have people avoid dangerous falls, so we're not likely to use it necessarily on the asphalt. I may wait for them to get on the grass. Hey, so when you fall, boop, in the grass you go, not as hard as a fall. Don't do it around flammable stuff. We have a preferred target zone, and I'll show you slides for that. The goal of the taser and the 5 seconds, we teach our guys to cuff under power, meaning while the person is experiencing the tase, get them in handcuffs as quick as you can so you don't have to continue to use more force. We teach to be cautious with our sensitive population and people who are at high risk. We're talking about elderly, children, women who are pregnant, people with low body mass, meaning they're like no muscle. Here's our preferred target zone. So if you look at the picture to the, I guess it would be your left, you see the yellow. Anything in yellow, we don't want to hit. We don't want to hit at the torso and up to the head or to the genital area. And the back, basically everything below the neck is a good target. We train our guys, we want you to aim for the back because you have a lot larger muscle groups in your back than you do in your front. Your abdominal is a lot smaller than your back muscles and your glutes. And you're going to get more compliance. There have been some effective hits to the front of the body. That's happened. And a lot of times, how often do you interact with someone where their back is to you? Right? Never, right? So sometimes it's like, well, the primary target zone is the back, but I'm looking at you face to face. How am I going to get to that? Sometimes it happens. We don't intentionally target the head, eyes, throat. Know that if, and Taser doesn't like to put this out, but if you get hit in the head with a Taser, you immediately have a seizure. Every time. Our goal is not to target that. Apply and assess. This is so critical. When we use force, when we apply force, we try to assess what is happening. Meaning, if it's working, stop. Put them in cuffs. Do your thing. If it isn't working, maybe we need to transition to a different force option. If it is working, maybe we need to keep it up just enough time to get the person into custody. When compliance is achieved, force stops. But that doesn't mean we don't maintain our situational awareness on what's around us. So let's talk about what's reportable. So we talk about, council got a packet given to them with how many reportable uses of force we had in 2019. So an officer is required to fill out a use of force report when they use force that is used or attempted that is higher than low level, so that intermediate and deadly force, and any application or attempt of a VNR, or any force where excuse me, that results in injury, so they were injured, they have a complaint of injury, meaning they may not be injured, but they said, hey, this hurts, or a complaint of pain or death. Okay. That was a lot of information to get through. I did as best as I could. Know that when we do this with our officers, it's a lot longer than that, and we break it down further. I flew through those slides. Any questions?
Well, thank you very much, officer, for that training and that class, and for showing us the extensive training that the police officers must go through. I don't envy them in having to make split-second decisions in these situations. But I'll refer over to the rest of the council. Anybody have any questions or comments they would like to share or provide?
This is Mayor Pro Tem Barajas. No questions, Captain. Just wanted to commend you on the awesome presentation. Very thorough. I think that if we had any questions, it was explained throughout your presentation. Again, very thorough. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, this is Councilman Milne talking. Yes, I just wanted to also say a comment that I really appreciate the professionalism of the Pasco PD and such a great presentation. And I know when I've done the ride-alongs, I was always impressed by how thorough the officers were and how they did really take into consideration the suspect's health. I've seen numerous arrests, and I was just impressed every single time. So thank you for all your hard work and everything you do for our community.
Thank you.
This is Councilmember Roach. Thank you, Officer Permore, for this presentation. It clearly is very in-depth and so, one, reassuring to myself and also to, I think, people of Pasco that the Pasco PD is doing everything in their ability to do exhaust all the other options before getting to that point of use of force. And I think that, a lot of the emails that we've all been receiving are, some are about the funding, but, a lot of the questions are about what's happening nationally. And so this was really good timing to have this presentation, but I do want to ask just a couple questions. And I think it was, I had talked to Chief Roski about this and sent him some of the questions that I was unable to answer for residents, but they were in regards to use of force. And so I'm just going to, bring those up. And I had passed on to residents that were asking me questions. I really appreciate that the Pasco PD is committed to transparency because, I've since read some of the police manual and, some of the folks have questions about, for example, chokeholds and weren't able to chokeholds and or strangleholds find that answer in the manual and under that chapter. And so just curious as to maybe why that isn't, and even the duty to intervene. It was part of this presentation and it's really good to have that information. And so just kind of wanting to know, are those pieces of information in the policy manual? And if so, where are they?
Yes, so there's a difference between the policy manual and the use of force manual. Meaning, so policy is typically short, more concise, and then our actual procedure, the procedures and how we do things, is a lot more exhaustive. And so the duty to intervene is in there. Our discussion about LVNR, it isn't necessarily the step-by-step on what LVNR is, more along the lines of what it is, the different levels, and then how we document that use of force. A lot of times we just, some of the more intricate technical sides, so we don't get into every single technique in our procedure manual. Now we are in the process of working on and building a curriculum for our use of force, and it's going through the review process right now where it details that. That will be coming out shortly. But maybe Chief Roski, if you had just something to add to that.
Thank you. That was
just real quick to answer Councilwoman there. The procedure manual, I believe it was emailed off to you. All of those answers are in there, and we put together a metrics and an answer sheet which will shortcut having to go through the volumes of that manual and look for LVNR or sanctity of life where that is. So we should be able to push that out just after this meeting and get that out where the public can easily click and find those. Because if it isn't your business, I realize it's out there, but you have to go through the whole manual to find some of those answers. So sanctity of life, of course, is in there, and the other questions that were asked. So that should be coming out with some shortcuts easier to find for you.
Chief Roski or Officer Paramore, if either one of you want to answer, because a lot of the questions that I'm receiving, and I believe that other city council members are receiving, are in regards to, what we've been seeing on the national news. And so, I've received, that was one of them was chokeholds, but the other one was about no-knock raids. And so is there anything that you can say about that? I didn't hear about that in the presentation that you might want to inform the public about.
Sure. No-knock warrants are very rare. They're in the most extreme of circumstances. They have to be approved by a judge, and it is the the safety to the public and to the place that you're searching and the people that are there so far outweighs the knock and announce for somebody's jeopardy. So those are not very common. We serve a lot of warrants, and I cannot remember the last no-knock warrant in the Tri-City area. They have been, but I can't remember one. They are so rare, and the exigent circumstances to somebody's safety has to so far outweigh, and a judge has to specifically authorize that. So they're very, very rare.
And
Thank you for.
if I may just add real quick, in the 15 years of me being a police officer in the city of Pasco, never have had one in the 15 years I've been a cop here. Never have had one.
And I guess to just switch gears a little bit, thank you for those responses. I was kind of curious about the technical assistance project. Is that like a strategic planning for the PPD, or do you guys have a different strategic planning that you do?
No,
I didn't quite understand what that was.
Yeah, I'm sorry. In 2015, 2016, when we asked the federal government, Department of Justice, and their COPS office to provide us the technical assistance program, we asked them for subject matter experts, other police officers, police chiefs, police organizations that had been through similar struggles of trust building, policy review in the U.S. that had seen successes. So that technical assistance program, which we asked the Department of Justice to help us with, they funded those pieces of that organization. Some training. That's where we first got our bias free training on implicit bias for the officers in the department. All came under the technical assistance program from Department of Justice. We've actually been our department has actually been subject matter experts now and asked by the Department of Justice to aid other police departments. So it's a subject matter expert peers that can come together to help other organizations, and is facilitated through the Department of Justice.
Well, thank you for answering that, because that was one of the questions that I'd gotten to, and I'd actually forgotten about it, was just implicit bias and whether we do that training. My last question has to do with hotspotters, which I know is a program that you all have been recognized for, and that is wonderful. I was wondering, does it provide opportunity, does the hotspotters program provide opportunity to partner with the local nonprofits that do some of the work of, helping folks who are homeless find housing, folks that are experiencing substance abuse issues to find rehabilitation programs, and those that are experiencing mental health issues to get, into counseling or to healthcare, whatever that they need?
Yeah, hotspotters would be a good place for that. Where we really use those organizations is when our mental health, our MOPs out in the field, and now our new homeless liaison officers. Those are the partnerships that they're looking to build, so that they have the resources to offer to the individual those wraparound services, whether they're a state-run organization, private, or a charitable organization, a 501c3.
Thank you, and that's all I had. And you started out earlier, Chief Roski, by saying that people want to come to Pasco because it's awesome, and I think that in light of what is happening nationally, there is a recognition that Pasco is awesome, and people do want to be here, and this is part of the reason that they want to be here, is because this is a safe place to live. It's a beautiful place to live, and the community is active and participating with its city and its government. So I really appreciate the presentation, and that's all I have.
Thank you. And one piece, we're going to try and take the shortcuts for those manuals, so it's easier for you and other people to click to find those answers there. You're not having to fumble through that whole policy. It'll go straight there for you. But please know, every officer has to sign electronically that they have read every one of those policies and procedures, that they have been trained on it, and then every time we make an update and as you can, new techniques, new laws come out, those get pushed to our officers, and they have to acknowledge that they have read those electronically and signed them. So unlike what we're doing for you, where we're finding the shortcuts for you, the officers don't get it quite that simple. They get it pushed out to them, trained to them, and then they have to review and read it. So I just wanted to make sure, because it is a lot of information.
This is Councilmember Alvarado.
Go ahead, Mr. Alvarado.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Great presentation, and certainly very thankful. We're over an hour in this, and certainly probably haven't even touched the very minimal aspects. So I'm very proud to be in a city where training and just really community policing are taken very seriously. And I know that there's catalytic events that shape cities for better or worse. And the tragedies that we have seen in our city have allowed us to look at ourselves and make improvements of a city that we can be proud of, that is recognized for its safety and for its outstanding police force. I did have one question, perhaps a little bit unrelated to the topic today, and I think it's for Mr. Roski. And so my question is more of a culture question, without getting into union law and employment and things like that, in the weeds of that. What's our policy when it comes to officers that have perhaps been found, perhaps there have been findings of them perhaps not being good actors to push forward that culture that we're trying to build here in Pasco? Is there how do we do I guess the retroactive action of working with these folks either to remedy what's going on or even cut ties?
Sure. So Captain Paramore brushed through that piece, but let me give you just a little more detail on it. Our officers are monitored by first-level supervisors, sergeants in the field. We have a database tracking system that tracks officer conduct. Good conduct. Fortunately, and this is most of the entries in the database system is for officers' positive conduct. But there is the ability to track negative comments or conduct, and that is where we also document retraining, if that happens to be what it is. Could be whatever the opportunity is to modify that negative behavior, we afford the officer. Goes for us in Pasco, we take that a step further because we really do want to check, have as many checks and balances, have that trust, and continue to build that trust, is we have what's called an early warning system that comes out of that database. And there are trigger points set on those employee conducts. If an officer gets X amount of behavioral conducts, whether it's use of force, whatever it might be, pursuit driving, the division captain notes that. It goes to the deputy chief, who the deputy chief then takes that employee and walks through every one of those to see if there is an issue with the employee's conduct. Is he have bad behavior and we need to deal with him to include termination? Or is it just simply we need to provide extra training? Or is it just happens to be the hours and the circumstances that that officer has been thrust upon? Sometimes you can't systematically say you can only have X amount of things happen in your 3 weeks of work. Just depends on what that officer is involved in. So we take that very seriously. The opportunity to modify behavior is key. And then, of course, retraining, whatever that might take. And it could include letting somebody go because they aren't adapting to our policing models and our culture that we are building within the organization and that we have built.
Thank you for answering my question that I had a hard time formulating, that you very much understood and give me a great answer to. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Alvarado. Anybody else?
Chief Roski, this is Councilwoman Roach again, and I just, Councilmember Alvarado's question just made me think of something else about the Citizen Advisory Committee. Is that the correct terminology for it? I just wanted to know how many people serve on that and what's the scope of work for that committee or commission?
We have 11 members of the community. They're an advisory committee, the Chiefs Advisory Panel, and they advise on policies and procedures that affect largely community policing. So what direction is the department going? What direction should the department be going? What's the temperament of the community? They do not get into discipline. They do not review discipline of officers. That is my responsibility. But they help guide us on any of these policies and procedures that we're developing. I'm working closely with a couple of the members on that committee right now because we are making sure that because of what's going on nationally, that we are looking at community engagement. So how are we doing that? We have that kind of on a robust opportunity, or we don't want to miss this opportunity right now to be more out in the community than we are. So I've got a couple of those members helping me with that. There's actually a procedure audit if you wanted to read in depth on it, but generally they're an advisory to the police chief on community policing issues.
Thank you so much for that answer.
Okay. Will, one last call.
So this is Councilman Serrano. One quick question for Captain Paramore. Early on in the presentation, but for the first of the two quips about the second responders, I was listening. You mentioned how I think really tongue-in-cheek some of this was new, and I know that was sarcastic. How much of this information was actually developed for this presentation, new policies adopted in light of what's been ongoing in, say, the past 3 months?
None. All this stuff has been in place for quite a while. I just feel like this was a great opportunity for the department to basically share with council and with our community what we've been doing for many years. And it kind of just cements in their minds, or hopefully puts their minds at ease, that we are the policies, the procedures, the training that we've implemented. It just kind of hammers home that that's what we're doing. And they may not be aware of what we're doing. And hopefully today I was able to get that across effectively.
You did, Captain, and that was what I was hoping to hear from you, is that these are somewhat long-standing policies, long-standing within the past 5 years or even older, because I think that's important for folks to know. So, again, thank you to both you and Chief for the time you put into this.
Thank you, Mr. Serrano. And thank you, Captain Paramore and Chief Roski. I know that since I've been on the council and since the experiences that we've had here in the city of Pasco, I know that there's been a constant improvement in our police department in trying to, more than anything, just be out with the community and get a better relationship with the community. I know Facebook was a big tool that we used. All the different activities and things that have been presented tonight has helped. And I know I have the full confidence that our leadership in our police department and our police officers from day one are getting the training necessary to make the best decisions possible. Now, they're human, and there's a saying, it takes a lot of attaboys for one oh boy. But we're trying to avoid that oh boy so that we can continue to gain the respect of our community and to be integrated with them so that we can maintain our high level of safety that we have in this city. And it takes a village. It's not just a police department, but it's all of us. And I want to appreciate Chief again and Captain for a presentation. It was a good amount of time that we spent here tonight, but we wanted to make sure we were as thorough as possible to provide this information to our community. And I certainly appreciate where we are at with the chokehold, the VNR. So thank you very much for that. I know a lot of people had questions on that. So if nothing else, I'm gonna ask for a 10-minute recess We've been in a meeting for 2.5 hours, so I just need 10 minutes. We will come back to our meeting at 8:50 to proceed with the remainder of the discussion points we need to get to tonight. So we'll be back in 10 minutes. Thank you. canceling the property purchase. Mr. Worley, are you on the line?
Mr. Mayor, your microphone, please.
Oh, there you go. Let's try it again. We are now in recess. Apologize. Next on the agenda item is the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation quitclaim deed for property purchase. Mr. Worley, are you on the line? No, I can't. Just give us 1 second. Why don't you try it again, Steve? No, not yet. Give us 1 more second.
Okay.
How's that? There you go. Now we can hear you.
Oh, okay, great. All right, well, this item on the agenda tonight is to talk about the potential purchase of a farm circle from the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. And just real quick, a little history on it. This property was purchased by the Bureau of Reclamation back in 1948 as part of the Columbia Basin Project Act. And several years ago, they decided they didn't need the property anymore. And so the city was interested in purchasing it. This particular circle or property is actually immediately south of one of our circles that we use at our processed water reuse facility. So we thought it would be a great opportunity to acquire the property and potentially use it as another field to dispose of some of the wastewater that comes from our reuse facility. And so in 2013, the city started the process of it. Unfortunately, it takes a few years to get through the federal process. They had to appraise the property. We got that appraisal, and before you tonight is the quitclaim deed. Back in 2013, there was another adjacent property owner to this piece that was interested in purchasing as well, and that was Middleton Farms. And so the city and Middleton Farms entered into an agreement, which is attached in your council packet, to go forward with the purchase by the city, and then the city would turn around and sell the south half of this circle to Mr. Middleton. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
Councilmember Maloney?
Yes, Mr. Maloney.
Yeah, Mr. Worley, just a question. I mean, obviously, congratulations for getting this through. When I saw that the former city manager was the one who signed the original agreement, I was taken aback. So thanks for following this through and getting it to where it needs to go. I know that ultimately, as we continue to expand our processing facilities and our processed water reuse facility, we will need that additional farmland to dispose of the water. Will this be sufficient for taking us for what sort of expansion levels of our processed water reuse facility and the future growth of that service?
We are currently looking at that right now with our consultants who do our farm operations report. They're evaluating how much additional property is needed. This will certainly help that. The city is also pursuing the potential for the purchase of other options so that we can increase or potentially increase our treatment process for increased flows from the existing processors and maybe even new processors. So I don't have a complete answer for you yet on how many circles or additional land is needed, but we are working on it right now, and we are keeping on top of it to make sure we continue to have enough for the future.
Okay, thank you. I know we want to be good neighbors, and obviously the Middletons have a heck of an operation out there, but I was just wondering whether we were going to need that additional half the land in the near future, and it sounds like that's we've got some other options as the picture gets clearer.
That is correct.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Then we'll be putting this on the agenda for next week. All right. Thank you, Mr. Worley, for that. We know that, having enough property for that water treatment plant up there is crucial for our processing plants and for the vitality of our tax base as well. So thank you very much for that. And we're looking forward to having that on our next meeting for approval. All right, next we'll go over to the professional services agreement with RH2 Engineering. Mr. Worley, you want to go ahead and give us an update on that or a presentation?
You bet. I'll go ahead and introduce it. This item is going to be covered by our CIP manager, Maria Serra.
Hey, Maria, how you doing tonight?
Very good. Thank you, Mayor and council members. I am here to talk about our proposed professional services agreements for design of West Pasco water treatment plant expansion. So this is our West Pasco water treatment plant. It is a modular type plant, which was built in 2010, and we are now due for an expansion. It's a modular, so it is 6 million gallons per day, treats right now. The next expansion is another 6 million gallons. That would take us to 12 million gallons. And then there is a third phase planned for the future. This professional services agreement covered the preliminary design and a preliminary design memo that is required for the approval of the Department of Health, and then final design documentation that includes plans, specifications, cost estimate, and a full bid packet so that we can bid this project. The scope of work, the actual improvements that are being designed are backwash ponds, some improvements to electrical and other systems. I will look right here. They're shown in our scope of work. Oh yes, we're gonna do an assessment of the condition of the different treatment processes that we have, and of course, the new module of membrane filters.
Okay. Anybody have any questions or comments on this addition?
This is Councilmember Maloney.
Yes, Mr. Maloney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Ms. Sarah, for the presentation. Keeping it brief, I think, is prudent on something like this. But I know we just had our urban growth area. We talked about the number of facilities we need, and I know this is one of those steps towards what sort of growth we're going to have, being able to accommodate that growth within the city over the next 5-6 years. When I was looking through the scope, I noticed that a number of things seem to be focused on potential improvements beyond just an increase in capacity. Are we having some problems that we're trying to solve, or we see some opportunities to maybe squeeze out a few more dollars out of the process, or perhaps be able to process more water? Or what are those sort of targeted at? High level. I'm not looking for super detail there.
Yes. So high level, the scope of work is to expand capacity of treatment. But to do so, we need to look at how this facility works within the system and how to get that water that is treated towards the areas or the pressure zones that need it. And for that, there is some slight modifications to the way some of the systems work within the facility. At the same time, we are also looking at the new intake that was just finished recently and add some additional pumps so that we can bring towards the water treatment plant enough flow so that we can treat that flow adequately.
Excellent. Thank you.
So it sounds like
Councilmember Alvarado.
Go ahead, Mr. Alvarado.
Just a quick question that I'm sure the answer is no. Any interruptions to kind of the system with what we're adding to it?
No, we do not anticipate interruptions to the treatment plant. Actually, the scope of work and the documents that are going to be prepared include a schedule in which it will delineate in which way to do those improvements so that there is no affectation to service.
Great to hear.
Thank you, Mr. Alvarado. So along with the increase in capacity, it's also to make sure it lasts more years, correct?
Correct.
Okay, perfect. All right, any other questions or comments?
Yes, this is Councilmember Roach, and I have one question for you, Maria. Is this expansion going to serve the new development that's coming to Broadmoor development area and or around the UGA? Can you talk a little bit about geographically where, what it covers?
Yes, so this expansion of the wastewater treatment plant will give us capacity so that we can serve zone 3, pressure zone 3, which is north, at the northwest area. And if we look at our comprehensive plan for water, it would be shown at the very top of our city. So it is basically for the north area. Now, once we send water to zone 3 can then cascade down if you want to serve also zone 2 and zone 1. So it technically will serve anywhere where the need is, but the expansion really is looking at sending that water to zone 3.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Councilwoman Roach.
This is Councilman Serrano. I saw that this was the entire construction of the project. We have a note saying that we have 4.62 million earmarked in the CIP for the construction and completion of the project. What we're looking at is about 650,000. So we'll have just shy of 4 million to complete it to construction. Do we think that's an accurate number at this point? Or I know it might be a bit of a guess at this point, but does it seem like that should be adequate, or we're going to have to amend the CIP, or are you going to come back with some significant changes?
We've used the information that was available to us, which was our comprehensive water system plan, and we've escalated those numbers as those estimates were put together a while ago. Through our preliminary design, we will be looking at alternatives, right, where we are defining which equipment we're using and what configuration is the best configuration, and that takes into consideration not only capital, but also O&M cost. And I think we will have a much better idea how accurate that number is. At this point, this is a planning level estimate that we've used, and I think at 30%, which is our preliminary design, we would be able to come back and share with you what those numbers look like for the overall project. At this point, this is the best information we have.
Excellent, thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Then we will thank you very much, Maria, for the presentation, and looking forward to it and bringing it to the next meeting for approval. All right, thank you. Next, we are going to an amendment to the BCES Interlocal Agreement. Chief Gear.
So this agreement, basically, this is the original agreement that brought Pasco and Franklin County into the dispatch center in Benton County. And this agreement, the amendment to this agreement is to allow Benton County to provide funds to install a radio tower site on Red Mountain to replace radio tower coverage that was reduced when the Yakima tribes required removal of radio tower sites on Rattlesnake and reduce the coverage down into the Benton City area. And Benton County needs to improve that coverage for their deputies, and they're agreeing to commit funds from their public safety sales tax to build that radio site and not require any capital funds from any of the current participating agencies in the original BCES interlocal agreement that we all brought into the first amended agreement. So that's basically where that sits. There may be some changes in operating costs, which would be the cost per radio in the future, which is how they fund their 800 megahertz radio system, but we don't know what those costs are going to be yet. So that's my annual report.
Thank you, Mr. Gear. So basically, just getting our approval because we're involved, but it's coming from the Benton County funds, and is what I understand.
That's correct, sir.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from Mr. Gear from the rest of the council?
This is Councilmember Roach.
Go ahead.
I have will there be any concern in the future of the same thing happening with Red Mountain and a radio tower there that has happened with Rattlesnake Mountain? Is that a consideration that we have to factor in?
When the tribes required a movement of the radio towers on Rattlesnake, it did have an impact of across the Two County area. This agreement is only meant to address the impact in Benton County and specifically in the Benton City area. If at some point the Franklin County Sheriff's Office elects to require better 800 megahertz coverage in in Franklin County, there may be some financial impact of that, but that has not been asked for or addressed at this time.
Thank you, Chief Gear.
Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you for that report, and we'll look for that as well in the next meeting for approval. We're going to go on to the next item, miscellaneous council discussion. We have a couple of items we'd like to bring to the attention of the council. Mr. Zabel?
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening again, Mayor, Council. First item up, Brent Kublek, our Recreation Service Manager, to give us an update on July 4th activities.
Good evening, and thank you for being patient, being here with us tonight. There you go.
There we go. You're welcome. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here and just report in on what we've been doing. Again, it's been an interesting year, and we wanted to put forward what we can to, like you said, like the council wanted to help the community still have the opportunity to feel like a community and to celebrate the 4th of July, even with the change in the cancellation of many of our traditional 4th of July activities. So what we put together first, okay, let me, oops, okay. Technical things here. First off is we partnered with the virtual Grand Ole 4th of Parade that we've put together. We've partnered with Cap KView to put this together. KView will be taking submittals of parade entry photos of area businesses, organizations, of their floats, of their business, or even homes, and the community will then be able to vote on those to select winners that the KView will award a $200 to the winner of that. And so we'll put together that. I have here.
And this is to decorate their homes, right?
Yeah, decorate their home, decorate their business, decorate their float that they normally would have put in the parade, and submit those photos to KView there. So
perfect, yeah. Thank you.
I have the little commercial from them that explains that will be coming up.
Grand Ole 4th of July celebration is virtual this year. Join Cap KV Local News in support of the City of Pasco's Grand Ole 4th of July virtual parade by voting for your favorite photo of local businesses, homes, and more, all decked out for the 4th. Now is the time to vote for your favorite at yaktroynews.com. One winner gets a $200 gift card. As a bonus, one lucky voter will win a $100 gift card. Vote again July 4th, so vote today. Pasco's Grand Ole 4th of July virtual parade from the City of Pasco and Cap KV Local News.
So the commercials, they'll be running on that. So the other thing, next one that we have is we're doing a virtual challenge. So for 2020, we're doing a 20-mile virtual challenge that started this past Friday, runs from June 19th up to July 3rd. Participants can run, paddle, swim, bike their way to the 20-mile goal. This is simultaneously promoting an event that normally does take place on the 4th of July called the Camp Patriot Fun Run. That fun run has also gone virtual this year. That's why we went through July 3rd to kind of help promote the July 4th, say, hey, use this 20-mile challenge as a training to then participate in the July 4th Camp Patriot Fun Run. Currently, we have 190 participants already involved in submitting and working their way toward that 20-mile goal. 125 of them have already inputted their progress as they've been going forward to that. So, I had a wonderful email. I've gotten a couple of emails on that challenge saying, "Hey, thank you so much for putting this together. It's just what we needed to get out of the COVID slump that they're in." So they're very appreciative of that. Next thing we're doing is basically just an invitation to citizens to hold their own at-home camp out on Friday, July 3rd. What's more American than going camping, right? And they can camp in their backyard or even in their living room. We're going to be just sharing ideas that they could choose to implement as they create their own experience. It's kind of just a call out for them to join in and do this just on their own. We also are putting out an invitation to them to, if they'd like to, individually register with the Great American Campout, which is a national, it might even be international kind of pro-camping, let's all camp together at this time type things. We're also doing an invitation to clean up to do a trail cleanup. I know one of the council members had talked about possibly doing some sort of service day or cleanup of parks and things, and we had already been working on this, and it's an invitation to the community to clean the trails in preparation for the 4th of July. Of course, one of the trails are something that is really getting used at this time. It's one of the only recreational outlets that some people have, and so we want to make sure that they're looking good, especially for the 4th of July, and so we have that invitation. The cleanup will take place the weekend of June 26th through the 30th, so this coming weekend. Individuals and families can register to participate, so they just go on to pascoparksandrec.com and register for kind of what area they'd like to clean in. Then we'll assign them a specific section of trail, so then that way we're keeping family groups together and maintaining social distancing that way. We also will be showing them where the trash drop points are that they can drop their bags, and our parks crew will be coming by and collecting those on the 29th and July 1st. The last thing we have is we call it Family Freedom Bike Ride, just an invitation to community members to go out and use our trails on the 4th, to go for a ride. It doesn't have to be a ride. You can go for a run or a walk together as a family as well, but go for a bike ride on the Pasco's trails in the morning of July 4th. They're asked to decorate their bikes in the spirit of freedom and America. And there will be rec staff will man 4 flag distribution points. We're not publishing those points, just they're out there along our trails. Hopefully you can come up just so we don't create a gathering point so much. So the staff will wear the proper PPE, and the flags will be set up in an easy grab and go, so you can just take the one that you're taking and keep going. So
awesome. Well, thank you for that, Brent, and thank you for the creativity. I mean, I wasn't sure what we were going to come up with, but it sounds fun, and it sounds like you already got a lot of participation going on. So thank you for the effort and the work you guys are putting in this, just to try to, improvise on the options that we have available. Anybody from the council have any comments?
Yes, this is Council Member Roach, and I just wanted to say thank you, Brent, for sticking so long with us till 9:15 p.m. I know it's late, and I just want to say, as somebody who grew up doing Pasco Parks and Rec programs, like taking swim lessons and tennis lessons and soccer, I really appreciate the Pasco Parks and Rec Department so much. My kids participate. They've done it since toddler toddler short sports, excuse me.
There you go.
And basketball and swimming as well. And so this creativity is great. We're actually, as a family, kind of having a competition with the virtual race. So my kids and we've challenged my mom to who can get to the 20 miles first. And so it's kind of been a fun way. And now I'm extending that out to other family members to participate as well. And glad to see that there'll be a 4th of July biking event. But I kind of wanted to know, is there opportunities within our own neighborhoods to host just kind of like a car or a bike parade within neighborhoods? And if Pasco Parks and Rec is helping with that.
Remember we put the email out.
Yeah, I mean, that, I believe an email was sent out, and there is opportunity there if that is something that, each council member, if one of the council members would like to try and do. Again, we as a recreation department didn't move forward to try and organize those things. Again, just looking at parades and the attraction to crowds that would be, and so, but there is if that is something that you would like to pursue, you can let us know.
Yeah, we could resend that email out.
Yeah, I plan on doing that within my own neighborhood, and I appreciate that. Just wanted to get that out there in the meeting for people who might be listening. And thank you for making these alternative accommodations to celebrating. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right, anybody else?
Yes, this is Mayor Pro Tem Barajas. Just wanted to say thank you to the Parks and Rec and Brent. I know the work behind the planning of modifying everything for 4th of July must have been hard and really had to use your imagination on some of those. I appreciate the work behind it, and I do look forward to participating in a couple of these events with my kids. But thank you so much. Just wanted to say that, and I do appreciate the hard work behind it.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, thank you, Brent, for that report, and looking forward to 4th of July and then everybody having fun.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, then the next item for miscellaneous discussion is follow-up council discussion on resolution number 3968.
So if I could kick this off with a few comments. So aside from affirming the right of assembly for what in this case was peaceful assembly, Resolution 3968 committed the council to some action. Matter of fact, it was a pledge to engage the public in open and honest dialogue. And the purpose of that dialogue would be to increase cultural competence, to broaden understanding among community members about the different cultures that make up our community. We had some great ideas come from the group we worked with when the subcommittee was developing the resolution itself, and then to further the goals of Resolution 3820. So July 15th, council passed the resolution. That was a pretty long meeting too. And with putting all that together and the tempo that took for the subcommittee and staff, there wasn't a lot of discussion or opportunity at that meeting to talk about, okay, what's the follow-up? What's the next thing we do? So that said, there's a couple of resources in place that I think we've kind of touched on, but I just, kind of list them real quick for council. One, the Inclusion, Diversity and Equity Commission, I think is ready to move forward on this issue. I think council's aware we've contracted with a very qualified facilitator to assist the IDEC, and then the community group that assisted the subcommittee that they pulled together they seem pretty motivated to dig in. And then, of course, we've had some other folks been part of the community dialogue with us all along, including some of the work the police department's done. We also have a newly established, and I was thinking about this earlier today, newly established Arts and Culture Commission that can add a piece that we have not had in the past. I mean, art and paint, words, music, sculpture, all can be pretty powerful tools for facilitating understanding. And so I wanted to just kind of throw those out as some of the resources that we have right off the bat. And with that, ask council to just take the opportunity to discuss among yourselves and give staff a little bit direction on how you may want to proceed with this.
Okay. Anybody want to start?
Councilmember Maloney?
Yes, Mr. Maloney.
I'll go ahead and get it kicked off. So I appreciate those words from Mr. Zabel, and I think we're all very aware of the IDE commission that we set up as one of the first actions that five of us no longer newbies, I guess, now that Ms. Roach has joined us. But I would like to point out that currently that group is down 3 members out of the 7. And not a single person on the committee has ever been a person from our African American community. So one thing that we should be very conscious of as we approach this is that we really will need to rely on the community, and part of this needs to be us expediting an appointment of those 3 new members. I would. My personal preference on this is because we need to move fairly quickly, I believe, to make sure that we have a community that understands that we really are listening and paying attention. I would recommend that we augment what we have with our current IDE and add a little bit more resources and attention, perhaps delegate a couple council members to act as direct liaison for a period of time to help kind of establish some of those next steps as to how we can approach this. And really demonstrate that we mean exactly what we said in our resolution that passed unanimously. We are here to listen to everyone and to commit to making sure that everyone in the city really understands who we are and what we're about.
Okay. Thank you for that. Anybody else?
So this is Councilman Serrano, and I appreciate Councilman Maloney's words, but I'm actually going to take the opposite position. I recognize that we're down in our IDE commission, several members, but at the same time, we authorize them with specific well, we actually never gave them specific goals, and we kind of gave them generic tasks. I think council should look at this as an opportunity to create a specific task and a specific deliverable and ask the IDE to show us that they can get it done. I have strong faith in the members that we've appointed, but I think to a great degree, we've just kind of said, go forth and do. We've got a vision, carry it out. I think if we actually sat down and said, we need something by X date and determine what that something is, I would prefer to see the commission carry it out and not appoint a subcommittee of council. I guess I'll leave it there.
Okay.
Is this Councilmember Alvarado?
Yes, Mr. Alvarado.
I think one of the things that perhaps would be helpful would be perhaps to give that deadline to the IDE of coming up with those goals themselves, rather than prescribing them from council, and then having council consider those suggestions. But I definitely second Councilmember Serrano's just wanting to put a little bit of I guess more of a deliverable kind of nature to the work that they're doing, and yeah.
Okay. Mr. Zabel.
So maybe if I could suggest a couple of things. One is we are down, and COVID has kind of messed up your normal process. We had a chance to talk about this just briefly for a minute. I think I might have mentioned at the end of another fairly long meeting. It might have actually been that one, but if council were to consider doing their interviews with the subcommittee to flesh out that committee and then making that recommendation for full council for ratification, that would at least get our committee with the full 7 members on board. I know we do have some applicants anxious and ready to go. And then Mr. Alvarado's comment, maybe what we're asking the commission for is to review it. First task would be maybe review the 3698 and the discussion around that, as well as 3820, the prior resolution, and then put a little work plan together and give them a fairly short period of time to get that work plan together, get it back to council for a head nod or approval. So they have some specific direction that they came up with that they feel they can carry out. And I just throw that out there as a suggestion.
Okay. So if we, so we have the applicants and your suggestion, would next Monday, prior to our regular meeting, be sufficient to, for 3 of us to volunteer to come in and?
We could, or we could just do a Zoom meeting at any time folks are available. We could coordinate that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'd be more than happy to be a part of that. Anybody else want to volunteer?
This is Councilmember Roach. I'll volunteer.
Okay.
Are you talking about volunteering to interview people or to just kind of cull through applications?
I think the culling the committee done at one point in time, with really getting down to the interviews. I think you got it down to 4 or 5, and we have 3, if I recall. Does that seem right, Debbie? Yeah. So yeah, I think that part's been done. So this would really just be the interviews themselves, and then the committee would make a recommendation on the 3 they'd want to put forward to the full council for ratification.
Okay.
I will volunteer myself then.
Okay. Anybody else? We need one more.
If no one else is volunteering, I'll volunteer.
Okay.
Okay. I was gonna offer the same, but she beat me to it. But if I recall correctly, I don't think we had any African Americans that were applicants. If that's kind of one of the things that we're considering, given the resolution, we may want to consider whether we need to reopen the applications. I mean, I'm trying to go off of memory from a couple months ago. I could be wrong, but I remember looking through the resumes, and I don't think we hit that target.
We had one individual that had submitted the application, but due to other duties, he's a teacher, was unable to attend the actual interview. So maybe we can revisit his application.
Well, can we reopen for application, people to complete application?
I think we could certainly open it up for a couple more weeks if that's what council wants to do.
Yeah, I would suggest that, because I think it's important that we have a couple options. Go ahead.
I think it'd be wise to do so, given given the statements we made in our resolution. I think it'd be wise to do so to see if we get a broader swath of applicants, maybe more interest. Might be harder to recall those applications, and it'll delay the process a little bit, but I think we'll get a larger group of involvement. That's my take, though.
I would agree with the climate that we are facing. I think we might get some more involvement. So why don't we reopen that, Dave, and get some more applicants in?
Will do.
Okay. All right. Is that enough? Go ahead, Mr. Maloney.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. I just want to caution everyone again that the wheels of bureaucracy move slowly, as we've seen through a lot of this. And if we're talking about getting to fall without having provided anything, I think we're in danger of not living up to the expectations of our community that is really speaking loud right now. So when we talk about this, I'm not saying that we shouldn't reopen the applications if we did not have enough applicants to properly represent our community, then absolutely we should. But we should also be nimble in the fact that we have a number of very active community members that don't necessarily have to be a part of the commission for their input to be very valuable to the committee members or the commission members that are currently sitting. So I think we should see what we can do to move forward as we put things together. I would just really hate to be non-responsive to the community concerns right now.
Thank you, Mr. Maloney. Anybody else? Okay.
I did want to talk about COVID for a second, if I could.
Okay.
So just to update the council, the cities and counties have been working with the health district on a pretty coordinated effort, and you saw some of that maybe at a document that was linked to a Tri-City Herald article over the weekend. One of the things we've done just in the last couple of days is get several reader boards out across the Tri-Cities on the use of face masks. I think we have 3 up and operational in Pasco now. We'll probably have 1 more by the time it's over with. We worked on over the weekend enlisting the chambers to work with their members, having electronic reader boards or even the old school ones with the plastic letters in the pole to get some messaging out on masking. Plan on connecting with BFT and schools. Cities and county health department, like I said, coordinated. That was one piece of a amended reopening plan. Some other things that are going on. There's about 189,000 masks that are going to be distributed by Franklin and Benton County Emergency Management. So face mask campaign is being several of them out there trying to. The health district's working and trying to coordinate with folks on those, but the chambers of all are pushing that with their members and TRIDEC and others. Department of Health is assisting Benton Franklin, or has been requested to assist Benton Franklin in contact tracing. That'll up our capacity there. I think we already discussed tonight a bit about testing and the National Guard being in, and so that's up and operational now. And then I think the other piece that I think it's worth talking about because it's a significant number, and that's the Coyote Ridge Correctional Facility and the numbers coming out of there. That's obviously a facility that the Benton Franklin Health District does not really have any control over. And so it seems just a little odd, I think, in some respects, given how isolated that facility is, that the numbers out of that facility should count against Franklin County. That said, their numbers are about 40. They add about 40 per 100,000 over the last 2 weeks, which has pushed our 2-week average for Franklin County to 308 cases per 100,000. So they are not alone. Significant impact, but they are not alone keeping the city from in Franklin County from moving forward to phase 2. Without Coyote Ridge in our numbers, we're still at 260 per 100,000, and the threshold, remind the council, is about 25 cases per 100,000. So we're still 10 times above where we would need to be to meet that threshold. So there's a lot of work ahead for Franklin County to move into phase 2, and a lot of folks invested in it. A lot of folks pushing towards it. We met with Rick White and I met last week with a few dozen business owners to talk about the CARES money that council's in the process of putting forward, and Rick's on the verge of having a third party signed up, so we'll be able to move that money out fairly quickly. And Richa and her staff, as well as Angie Pittman up in CED, they're ready to go on that. And not much more I can add to that right now, other than you have a lot of folks really trying to coordinate our effort. I think the big thing here is right now, and that's why we're putting the effort on, is people wearing masks. Our numbers are not going down. we need to do some things different because it's not making a difference. And I know some folks are saying, well, we're testing more people, so our numbers are gonna go up. That is probably true. There's probably some truth to that, but the only way we're gonna get our numbers down is for people not to be testing positive. And to do that, we need to not spread the virus between us. So to the extent we can work with the public and get that messaging out there, I think it benefits us all to get where we wanna be. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Okay, and again, to add to that, the campaign I mentioned earlier that I was participating in is who I wear the mask, a mask for. And so you can be looking out for that as well with the messaging going out for wearing masks. All right, is there any other miscellaneous discussion? If not, then I appreciate.
Question,
Go ahead.
isn't next week Monday? Or are my eyes deceiving me? And if so, are we having council?
We don't have a council meeting scheduled.
No.
For next week.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that and figured some people might be happy for that, like me.
I appreciate you asking that. That was in my notes and it was going long and I totally blew over that.
No.
So I'm glad you asked.
It's all right, we did it with the 3.5 hours tonight.
Thank you for reminding us, Councilmember Serrano. All right, with that, then we will come back in 2 weeks for the next meeting. And thank you for participating and during these long meetings. Appreciate all the hard work and the dedication you guys put into this position and what you're doing for the community. So thank you for that. And with that, there's no executive session tonight. So this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.